OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It's Monday morning. It's OTB AM. Jarno with you through all the way until 10. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch. On Twitter, you can use the hashtag OTBAM. You can use @OffTheBallAM or @OffTheBall. We don't care. However you want to get your views across this morning. We're going to talk about the rugby. We're going to talk about the Gaelic football. We're going to talk about the Champions League. And almost all of it is in this week's performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Okay, this week, as every week, we give you the opportunity to enter a competition and to give us your views. I think many people have many views at the moment. I think, Owen, you've done a reasonable job this week of trying to capture one of the wildest sporting weekends that I can remember.
It was pretty busy, to say the least. There's a couple of moments, I think, that probably punctuated the whole thing, from Derry yesterday to the scenes of Ronan O'Gara and his La Rochelle team celebrating on Saturday to, of course, the match and all the scenes around the match in Paris on Saturday night. And you were on the ground in Paris on Saturday night, so I think that is the only place to start. Paris in general as an event, Ger, fair to say that this is rock bottom, in the reddest of the red of our Gillette Labs performance rankings this morning. Yeah, it's very, 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 very lucky that something incredibly serious didn't happen at a couple of different points. There could have been some very serious unrest in advance of the game, and then afterwards it felt like, this is one of the worst stewarded events that you're ever going to see. There was like a potential for multiple crushes, pre-game and post-game. The pre-game stuff, I kind of didn't see most of the pre-game stuff, and I ended up having to walk around to get my accreditation. But because of the way my accreditation was, I didn't have a ticket, and I managed to get like all the way to the stadium and to walk past anybody looking for tickets, any of the police looking for tickets. So that'll give you a sense of how easy it was to access the area, and so therefore loads of people who didn't have tickets were there. But I would hasten to add that did feel like they were locals as opposed to fans of any team. In fact, they were absolutely locals. So that kind of added to the tension pre-game. Then when the game was delayed, obviously it seems like most fans managed to get their seats. There's definitely stories of people who were so concerned about the pre-game that they decided not to go in. And then afterwards it was just bizarre. I was waiting to meet somebody, and kind of there's one area where you all get funneled down towards the train station. So you'd think this is going to be well marshalled because it's where everybody's going. Everybody's going to the train station. And at one stage, while I was waiting there, out of nowhere, it seemed riot police formed this kind of cordon to prevent people getting through, which was like where they had been told to go. And then all of a sudden, everybody turned around and started kind of coughing and heaving, and it was like, what's going on? Oh, what? There was no scenes of violence. There was nothing. No one had caused any trouble, and for like it seemed pure crowd control. They had decided that the way they were going to control the crowd to go in a different direction from where they were supposed to be going was by pepper spraying them. Well, so it was pepper spray, and I
saw somebody else say that they saw canister. They got hit in the leg with a canister. So there must have been some tear gas as well. But this felt like pepper spray.
Did you get it?
Yeah. You couldn't not get it.
What's that like?
I mean, it's very unpleasant. It's not like I was tear gas once before, and that was horrific. But this was it dispersed pretty quickly. So afterwards, you see the scenes of them with like the little small ones, kind of like mosquito spray, like we're little mosquitoes to be sprayed, little ants that were the French cops. The French cops made a bollocks of it, basically. That's the long and the short of it. And they can have all of the investigations they want, but ultimately, the red herrings of some people showing videos of people climbing over stuff. Like at every big sports event, there are going to be some blaggers trying to get in, but you know this in advance because you've run sports events before. But what happened here was the French police made an absolute bollocks of it, and then UEFA came along and were like, "Oh, Liverpool. Let's blame the Liverpool fans. that's what's going to happen here. But it's not going to wash. Like,
no, I think if there's one fan base in the world that it's not going to wash with as well, it's probably Liverpool fans, and I think it's gone down pretty terribly so far what UEFA have tried to do. Like, so from your perspective, the fact that you had accreditation as opposed to a spectator's ticket, that probably made your experience beforehand a lot more pleasant, I should say, did it? Because you kind of had more access to different areas, or you could maybe avoid certain bottlenecks, whereas you're a ticket holder, you're kind of stuck with one entrance, or what was that like?
At the end, yeah, eventually. But to get to where the accreditation centre was, I'd come up from the train station, then ended up doing a kind of lap, and you could see, like, I saw in Rob Draper's brilliant Twitter thread, he was talking about there was huge sponsor signs being held up, and then all these people in their suits who were like the Prawn Sandwich Brigade, and they were all hemmed in. I was like, this is very interesting. I mean, they've all paid a lot of money for these corporate tickets, and they're not getting in. And it did take ages to get from the train station to the ground. So you were definitely feeling, okay, I've got about an hour here before kickoff is scheduled.
So you were there an hour before kickoff?
Yeah.
Because I would have thought that you needed to be in there a lot earlier than that to have actually got in on time, it seemed. Cause
by the time we got to the ground, because everything had slowed down at that point, it was still an hour before.
Okay.
And you could wander around if you were just on your own, around the back of the stuff, and ultimately it was actually after the match that I felt the most hairy, because after we got through that bottleneck where so the cops tear gas people or whatever it was to slow them down. After you got down there was this kind of very slow moving march, which kind of it cleared a little bit, and then there was the local youths waiting for. I got pickpocketed on the way in. Actually, that was the other thing that happened.
What was taken?
Nothing in the end, because I grabbed the hand.
So you saw the guy doing it?
Oh, totally. Yeah. He just kind of was like, "What do you? No."
What's meaning? You're not going to let me pickpocket you?
Exactly. You could see though that because there was no cordon. Anybody who wanted to do anything could come in, and most people had their tickets on their phones, and so therefore phones were high currency, and so you can see how if you were of a mind to try and get a fan who's in a tight area, that you could easily kind of bump up against. So all in all, you would say it was one of the worst organised sports events. Well done, Paris.
And just one last thing then on the gang of youths.
On the way back, yes. Yeah, so you get kind of funneled past them. So it's like, relatively easy pickings. At that point, you're getting down to the train station, right? And then all of a sudden the queues start again, and the train station, the queue stops at the train station, and you're like, we're going underground here. The only thing relieving the queues at that point are the trains coming. So you're relying on the trains as this pressure valve. And if the pressure valve gets delayed or something happens, nothing's going to stop it. The people are going to keep coming behind you. So
that's terrifying.
You're desperately trying not to think, well, this isn't very good, is it? I mean, this could go pear-shaped pretty quickly, couldn't it? So there were loads of police, but they were standing around at one stage kind of doing nothing. And they looked like they were riot police who were really only there to deal with whatever riot they had predicted, as opposed to stewarding police who were like, okay, you're going here, you're going here, you're going to the city centre, you're going to there was no sense of that.
And is there I wonder what happened, how did this actually occur, given, as you say, the amount of French thing to be we're not working with 2 months notice or whatever. Or
no, you can't. No, because again, to go back to Rob Draper's thing, he was talking about there was one specific area where 3 vans have been parked to make everything narrow, but that seemed to be the situation. So we had a friend who went to the game and like that had ended up kind of, the whole crowd had been funneled into one of those tiny little corridors. In all the stadiums, there's this kind of, when you're going up the stairs, the stairs are kind of narrow, but if everybody was going through the same stairs at the same time for all of the outside area where they were going to sit, so say you took Croke Park or the Aviva, particularly the Aviva, if there's, you're going down the stairs after the match, if everybody was going down the same stairs and that was the only access or egress areas that people had, that's kind of what it felt like. It was like, we're going to funnel everybody in here. And the other thing is, if there's nobody telling you where to go, you're like, everybody just follows the crowd because that's what happens. And so, again, there's nobody either side saying, okay, this is grand, you're going to be here. No, you need to go there. There was no sense of it being managed. The notion that they didn't have enough time for it, that's nonsensical, I think. Like, and if they're going to use that as some kind of defence, it's like, well, then you can never have anything again. Thanks very much. The trouble with that is, of course, that like what happened at Wembley reflects horribly on England's ability and the English FA's ability and the Metropolitan Police, or whichever police force they had running that. But they're getting stuff again, and they're like, oh, that's nothing to do with us, that was just those crazy fans on cocaine. Now you can't be blaming the fans on cocaine, because actually it wasn't them, it's the police. And it's like, oh, maybe everybody's just forgotten how to steward big events in the aftermath of COVID. I don't know, but it did feel like it could have got pretty hairy pretty quickly. And the thing is, if it had got hairy, what were they going to do? Well, like, what's the contingency plan? What's the relief? How do you just bring everybody into the train stations and let them like walk on the tracks? I don't know.
The fan park stuff was pretty grim as well, and in many ways even more grim. Like the scenes from obviously Paris in the city, and that fan park that got tear gassed was horrendous. So like a friend of mine was in the fan park in Paris, didn't bother going to the game, when nowhere near Saint Denis, and the situation was that at full time there were people trying to maybe go out and exit should have gone out, or trying to find a spot in the fence to get out, basically trying to not go the way that the French authorities told them. And the French police's response was tear gas, like indiscriminate tear gas. Videos of people of all ages covering their eyes with what was being thrown at them. And then obviously you have that situation outside an Irish pub in the Paris city. The French police were on one on Saturday night.
They were absolutely on one. They'd all obviously been watching La Haine and taking their lead from history. I mean, they were like stereotypical French police. That's, they behaved the way I expect the French police to behave. Hardcore shit kickers with no real regard for anybody's enjoyment of the event. That's basically what happened. And I'm really looking forward to the Rugby World Cup. Really can't wait to see how France manages to steward the Rugby World Cup.
You wouldn't have got that in Breffni Park.
You probably wouldn't. Conor Moore was at the game. You know him as Conor Sketches, but he was on speaking with Joe Malloy yesterday, and his experience sounded absolutely horrific. They were there really early. They had 6 tickets. They'd bought the same tickets together, and one of them, they're like, oh, this is a fake ticket. And it's like, what? They're all the same. But eventually a steward let them in, because they were like, we have the 6 tickets here. They're clearly in sequence. It's not. But loads of people wouldn't have had that. And loads of people actually weren't even given the opportunity to explain, no, hang on, this is true. Andy Robertson was saying that some of his mates were like, no, that's a fake ticket. And I was like, I got it from Andy Robertson, like, by all accounts too, the tickets are easily copyable. So I don't know. I mean, so UEFA have to take a portion of the blame. Definitely. And the French police have to take a portion of the blame. And given that it's UEFA's gig, it's their party, they're the ones hosting it, you would expect that they know a thing or two about hosting these at this stage. Like, it is literally the biggest game in world football.
What was it like being in the UEFA party when you eventually get in? The bouncer says, yes, tonight is your night, man.
I like the Real Madrid fans are amazing. They absolutely were. They were on one, and they were absolutely enjoying what was going on. Because the longer the match went on without a goal, the more tense it felt like the Liverpool fans got, and then all their worst fears are come true.
So from being inside the stadium, any other nuggets from what happened to Liverpool, or they just got absolutely Ancelotti'd? Is that what happened?
It seems that way. Yeah, I mean, there's been not that much analysis of the football because of what happened. So you'd hope that. I mean, I presume Klopp and everybody else, but you'd hope that they try and absorb some of the lessons of the smash and grab. I see Michael Owen's getting murdered for saying that, oh, they're still the best team in Europe. He's like, you'd have to say, I mean, they might still be the best team in Europe. I don't know. But, it's Real Madrid who have once again won the European Cup despite not being the best team in Europe. So fair play to them, because that's all that matters. And I say that in like the most glowing terms. Well done. We should all be taking a leaf from the most successful team in the history of world football.
Yeah, it's like some of the individual collections of Champions League trophies in that Real Madrid squad is absolutely ridiculous. Michael Owen saying that a team can beat a team that they're not necessarily better than is not exactly rocket science. It doesn't necessarily prove that, but I think really it's just you talk about running the gauntlet outside the stadium. I mean, Real Madrid ran the competitive gauntlet all season long and took the very, very hard path to the final. Like, listening to Klopp afterwards was interesting, that he was saying that Madrid are incredible. The possession was 50%, but we had more shots on target. But the most decisive one they scored and we did not. It's the most simple explanation in football. He was then saying, I think Madrid shot once and scored a goal. I respect them competitively. Whatever you do within the rules, it's fine. We've had to defend ourselves on many occasions. And I think maybe he's just a little bit upset with how Real Madrid set up, but gave them plenty of credit as well. Lots of respect for himself and Ancelotti at full time. And we've seen this in the last couple of weeks with Klopp as well. When things don't go Liverpool's way, he's not overly happy, which, again, isn't exactly a completely non-understandable reaction when your team has lost such a massive game. But actually, one of the more interesting things afterwards was Tony Cruz getting really pissed off with German TV.
I saw Cruz. I didn't hear what the crappy question was.
The question was essentially was giving Liverpool credit and the plan to keep them out. I don't have it in front of me here, but he said you had 90 minutes to come up with 2 shit questions, and walked away from the interviewer. Has another pop off him again when he's walking past. I think there's probably a bit of a pent-up frustration, maybe German coverage of football, and is it overly negative potentially? I don't know, but it seemed that there was a bit of beef there between Cruz, not necessarily and the reporter, but just I think it was kind of predictable potentially from his perspective. 2 negative questions, he said. You can tell right away that you're German, he said.
Yeah. So well, it turns out every footballer in every part of the world is subjected to the same thing, and maybe that's what makes him such a great footballer.
Potentially. Anyone in the flesh that stood out?
Well, Courtois is pretty good at football. The Real Madrid ability to always be in position and to manage to thwart the team who seem to be far superior to them, that is quite impressive.
Yeah.
And Trent's very good. This let's scapegoat Trent. I'm not down with that. Liverpool are not Liverpool without Trent, and so therefore you just have to realise that that's not going to be possible. Konate played very well. I don't know. I mean, it was very high end football. The Mo Salah killing the ball with at pace however it comes to him is also very impressive.
Were you singing your own team songs when Camila Cabello was singing?
No.
You weren't singing an Aston Villa song?
No.
In the dressing room?
Why are you supposed to?
She wasn't happy. She deleted a tweet. She said, playing back our performance, and I can't believe people were singing their team's anthem so loud during our performance. Like, my team and I worked tirelessly for so long to bring right vibes and give a good show.
Yeah.
Were the vibes right?
No, because everybody's like, why is the game delayed? What's going on? How did that happen? And so everybody's immediately on social media going, oh, hang on a second, what's happening? What are they doing? The cops are what? Oh, this doesn't sound good. Because, in the stadium, when you're not watching the TV, it's very hard for you to know exactly what's going on. Although apparently, according to Gary Neville, BT's coverage was crap. That was pretty interesting. Did you see this?
I actually didn't see Gary Neville's tweet.
I didn't see it. I just read about it in the back of the Telegraph. In fairness to the Telegraph, they're using it as another opportunity to kick Jake Humphries, which, on this show. Alan Tyers is the man you want to read this morning. In one of those inspirational interviews he's fond of, Humphrey once attributed his career success to never sitting in the comfy chair. Perhaps when occasions demand, football broadcasters need to get off the soft furnishings and out into the hard world of actual events. Gary Neville, Adam Crofton said, surprised BT Sport don't have a team on standby outside of stadium, getting little to no sense of the major story from the broadcaster. And Gary Neville replied, are you surprised? I'm not. They can't react or aren't agile to things like this happening. Right, shots fired. In fairness, Sky do have a news team who covered it really well.
Yeah, so that was the Champions League final, all of it, I guess, this morning in the red, one of the worst sporting events ever. Don't go to the Champions League final, says Gerard Gilroy. Provinces are next up in the amber this morning, because in fairness, there was a bit of glory yesterday from a neutral standpoint, that pitch invasion in Clonus, seeing the scenes with Derry winning their first Ulster Championship in 28 years. Connacht's final was a decent game as well. You had 2 teams of a of a similar standard going up against one another. But I think if we were talking about this on Saturday night, the provincial football situation would be rock bottom. It would be in the reddest of the reds. But I think what happened yesterday kind of brought it out of its slumber. How much of Kildare Dublin did you get to see on Saturday?
I chose to. This game didn't happen at the weekend. It got cancelled. I heard something about not enough people showing up, and so therefore they decided that they weren't going to play the game. Am I wrong?
No, that's exactly what happened. They just gave the cup to James McCarthy and they moved on.
He seemed very thrilled to be receiving said cup as well.
Yeah, no, he did. Obviously, it's very, very predictable. I mean, to a degree, there was definitely talk this year that maybe Leinster could have been competitive, and it wasn't. There was talk during the week that this game could have been predictable, or could have been competitive rather, and it wasn't. So, was it overly predictable that this was going to happen to Dublin? Like, I definitely had a hunch on Saturday afternoon that Dublin were going to kill him. That was just kind of like a match.
You did. You stuck it in the WhatsApp group. Yeah, I think all week long I was definitely trying to not get too carried away and didn't get too carried away. But you're still hopeful that something is going to happen. Like, what I had hoped was that the vanilla defence that Kildare had been playing in the league and in the championship to date was somehow not putting something on tape for your opposition. But actually, it turned out it was the absence of a proper defensive strategy. And against the Dubs, that might be a bit of a problem. Particularly this form of the Dublin team, which are like in the cycle where they're trying to be explosive. And because their own defence is not great at the moment, they realise they're going to have to score massive scores to win matches against good teams. And they have the players to do that. So, Dublin good at football. The provincial championships are a complete joke and need to be put out of their misery. But what's worse is we're going to get the Pigs Mickey next year of the round robins. As somebody reminded, was it somebody on late night GAA last night was like, there's going to be a situation where the round robins happen and then one of the four teams gets eliminated.
Yeah.
Like, what? What are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we keeping these? I didn't see what the attendance figure was. Was it published?
I'm not sure what there was at Dublin Kildare.
But it wasn't just Dublin Kildare. It was Dublin Meath and the women's football.
Yeah.
And the Meath footballers are bringing about 10,000 to matches.
Yeah, true.
So I would say the Meath footballers, women's footballers, are potentially the biggest draw in Leinster football at the moment. Hannah Terrell scored a late goal. Dublin won. That rivalry is going to explode. Hopefully they'll play again later on in the year. Maybe in an All-Ireland final. Like, that's now the biggest game in Leinster football. But nobody, it seems, in Leinster football cared enough to advocate for something better. So they can all...
Yeah, like, what's interesting is that the two most depressing sporting events from the weekend were probably the Leinster men's senior football final and the Munster men's senior football final. And like we've spoken about this so much in the past, where nobody's getting anything out of this. Like the players aren't getting anything out of this, and that includes the Dublin and Kerry players. I think Brian Fenton was on the record last year as saying that Proposal B would have been a positive step. Declan Darcy was on the show saying Proposal B would have been a positive step. We know for a fact that we don't know what Dublin voted on the day. There's a suggestion that maybe they were anti-Proposal B. They definitely didn't come out in favour of Proposal B.
No, they never lobbied for it once. They never publicly said, we think this is a great idea. Actually, it's going to benefit us in the long run. And doing the numbers, it seems like they may well have voted against it. We can't say for sure, but... And
the same goes for Kerry. And in actual fact, what you can go on are the public pronouncements that were made around it. And again, Kerry didn't come out in favour of this thing at the time, even though we know that people coming out in favour of it would have made a difference, would have really made a positive difference. And Kerry instead, on the day of the vote, their chairman got up and said, we need a roadshow to bring this thing and lobby opinion around the country, because they just hadn't done their research.
More time. We need more time to talk about this. We've only had since 1884 to look at the provincial system, but we definitely need more time.
And I think that kind of spoke to Kerry and Dublin, both pussyfooting around the opportunity for change. So they've done their players a disservice, I think, because I really don't think the Dublin and Kerry players benefit from this whatsoever. Their careers are wasting away in provincial championships at the moment, and they can pretty much thank their county boards for that. But at this point, what is absolutely crazy is that even the provincial councils aren't benefiting from this. 14,500 people show up to Killarney on Saturday, an absolutely glorious afternoon, and 14,500 people show up for a Munster final. Like, it's absolute, like that's. I know, well, in fairness now, they were charging €40 for a stand ticket for Killarney on Saturday, so maybe they will actually make a hell of a profit off what's going on because the tickets are so expensive. But it seems to me that even the coffers are going to speak for themselves one way or another eventually, and that the provincial councils will surely realise that what they're trying to produce here is absolutely pointless. We obviously heard...
They don't care. They don't care.
No, and we got that from...
Evidence has been before their eyes for the best part of a decade, and they don't care.
And I think that probably the evidence was before everybody's eyes last year when the provincial officials were on the record in a multitude of different places talking about their views of change and, you know, turkeys voting for Christmas and, you know, change of Brexit proportions and like potential disaster talk about what would have happened with change. They managed to keep the status quo, and probably more worryingly, they've managed to usher through change that, or something that masquerades as change for next year, that might keep their house in order and keep their power base strong. And once again, we'll probably have a month or two of time wasted early next year when it could be much better spent, and these players could be much better served, the fans could be much better served, and the sport could be much better served. We're
stuck now with the Pigs Mickey for the next 3 or 4 years, because it'll be like, oh, we can't go back to that, we have to see how it goes, we have to wait and see what the impact of this is because there's no evidence. And it's like, okay, well, we really know. We've actually built in the failure of this structure for the next number of years before we're going to be able to go back again and go, okay, please, let's just have a proper league-based system with 3 or 4 tiers, ideally 4, and away we go. Like, the game, notwithstanding all of the criticism of the Ulster football final, the game is actually in a much better place than it has ever been with regards to the skills, the tactical and technical ability and the proficiency of the players. Like, anyway.
Yeah, let's move on to the Greens. We've left probably like 30 seconds for some dose of positivity for your Monday morning. Nottingham Forest, which an extra R in there for good measure. Their 23-year exile is over from the top flight. Steve Cooper's done an incredible job here. Won the playoff final yesterday. They made their worst start to a season for 108 years at the beginning of the season. Then they get rid of Chris Hughton. Steve Cooper comes in, the 14th manager they'd appointed since 2011. And apart from 1 week spent in the top 6 in February, they didn't get into the playoff places until April. So they were the form team in the division coming into the playoffs. They timed their run to perfection. And maybe we should have paid a little bit more attention to their cup run, you know, beating Arsenal and then Leicester and then that 1-0 defeat to Liverpool. It was a pretty excellent run. Obviously, you've got Stephen Reid involved in the setup there. He's been linked with Wimbledon, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I saw that. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. You'd imagine he'll hang on and see where this Premier League journey goes for Nottingham Forest. But just a fantastic storyline to have back in the Premier League. Leeds getting promoted a few seasons ago, Nottingham Forest back in there. You've got a very, very good collection of 20 teams in the Premier League next season with plenty of narrative. And then at the top of our performance rankings this morning is, of course, Ronan O'Gara. Kevin has been in touch to say, egg on the face, and it's just been deleted. Egg on the face, and all the OTB crew tip Leinster. None of you gave O'Gara team a chance. Kevin, of course, I presume predicted La Rochelle to overturn the 12-point underdog tag that they had. Dave says, lads, I warned you about hubris. You might as well write the opposition team talk for them. And yeah, I mean, I predicted Leinster would win comfortably on Friday. I definitely bought all the hype around this, so it's interesting to see what the verdict will be on this. Obviously, the La Rochelle game plan was close to perfect, it seems, and I think that listening to Ronan O'Gara's post-match comments on BT on Saturday, they were very, very interesting. He said that he spotted nuggets in the Connacht game, in the Leicester game, and they utilised those or he said he had stuff to work on basically with those sort of nuggets that he got, and it clearly manifested itself in a brilliant game plan. And he was also very interesting talking about the end of the game, where he thought that Leinster could be hurt in the last 20 minutes, that Leinster kill a team come half time, and if you can hang in there at half time and still be in the mix, you've got a very, very good chance. And I think he was pretty happy with the scoreline at half time. Like, the fact is though, Leinster were up by 8 points and they were favourites before the game, and they were on paper, it seemed anyway, the better team. Maybe that's not true. Maybe we just totally misinterpreted this matchup completely. Maybe the bookies got it spectacularly wrong with a 12-point favourites tag beforehand. Or maybe Leinster, with an 8-point lead coming down the home stretch, should have done a lot better, and maybe they just completely bottled this on Saturday evening. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the truth is. I'm sure we'll probably get to the bottom of it as the week goes on.
Yeah, we're going to speak to Alan Quinlan in just a little while. I'd love to hear from the Leinster fans and supporters what they think, as opposed to the goading Munster fans. In fairness, goading Munster fans, today is your day. This is actually probably going to be your week, and who knows what the rest of the season is going to hold. It has the potential to go juddering off the tracks for Leinster at this point, but I don't know. I also don't know. Sometimes you get beaten in the final by a fairly amazing cup team who clearly have a bit of a maverick genius in charge, and does that mean that they didn't bottle it, or does that mean that they did? I don't know. Like you, I do know that there's no excuses. Like, they can't have any excuse about what happened. I mean, I know I see them kind of complaining a little bit about the refereeing, but like, you know, you've got the best team in Europe. By all the stats, by all of the available metrics that we have to analyse the match pre-match, you are the best team in Europe, and you put yourself in a position to deliver, and then you don't deliver. That is the ultimate kick in the teeth. Because
that is really interesting, because you talk about the stats there. That was one of the big storylines going into this game, is that when you looked at all the metrics that seemed to matter, it put Leinster on a pedestal above every other team in Europe. And then you listen to O'Gara afterwards, and it seemed that his game plan was quite an analytical one, that it was based in numbers. So I'm not sure did he just kind of interpret the data a little bit differently, or what it was, but it seems very, very interesting. Something happened in their pre-match analysis, and like he gave Donnacha Ryan plenty of credit in terms of what he was saying in his Tipperary French to the pack as well in the build-up to the week. And that pack obviously was always going to be a weapon that, if Skelton was fit, could have been something that was going to hurt Leinster. And as it proved, the winning try was exactly from a ball up the jumper sort of rugby.
When you saw the team being named and Skelton in it, did you feel a little bit like the morning where Joe Canning told you he wasn't going to retire, and then half an hour later he retired? Was it exactly the same as that when you had O'Gara on the show last week? I wasn't here. When you had O'Gara on the show and you're like, oh, Skelton played good. No, probably
actually,
not.
Yeah, no. You should clip that actually. Yeah, I think it was Adrian who asked him, is Skelton going to play? And he's like, no. But in fairness, and he did go on to say that there is
There's always a chance. I've told him to basically take the rest of the year off. I will see you next season for pre-season.
Well, it shouldn't. It wasn't the talk of Leinster that that whole vulnerability to power had been corrected. That it doesn't matter. You could have 8 Will Skeltons in that pack, and it wasn't going to matter a jot, because this Leinster team this season was a new Leinster, and they'd managed to get over the lessons of the Saracens games and the La Rochelle game, and they were back back and burlier than ever, I think was the Leinster tagline, wasn't it?
John says, thanks to ROG for giving every coach who will play Ireland a blueprint to stop them playing. Yeah, thanks ROG, is basically some of the Leinster fans. I think it's fairly like that's how rugby works. Isn't it better that we learn this now as opposed to in the group stages of the Rugby World Cup next year? OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs. For an effortless finish to your day, we always on Sunday into Monday give you the opportunity to win a Gillette Labs shaving kit. To be with a chance of winning, let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. The best place to enter is today on the YouTube, or you can tweet us at Off The Ball, and we'll read out the rest of your entries over the course of the rest of the show this morning. That is this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
You're done. Were there other shout-outs this week?
Were there other shout-outs this week?
Kildare could have been in the red, really, couldn't they?
Who could have been in the red?
Kildare could have been in the red.
Yeah, there's only so much time for throwing people under the bus on a Monday morning. Kildare could have been more red, Derry could have been more green, I think. And Galway definitely... Galway's just kind of nicely floating under the radar yesterday, I think, given the historic scenes that we saw in Clonus. So I don't know. It's that side of the championship is going to be very, very interesting. I think when you look at yesterday, though, I think you're looking at Derry as potential All-Ireland finalists.
We'll talk about that with Antony Moyles a little bit later on. 6 minutes past 8. Mark Lawrenson's up next. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The team of OTB are taking on a challenge that requires fitness, a challenge that demands months of training and preparation. A challenge that requires knowing when to push and when to focus on recovery. Triathlons aren't easy, but having a fitness coach helps.
Whoop are helping us non-athletes.
You need all the help you can get.
Yeah, as I was saying, helping us non-athletes feel like pros in our challenge to complete a triathlon this summer.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Whoop. Unlock your inner potential with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides you with actionable feedback on your sleep, training, recovery and health. Check out whoop.com for more.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at godating.ie we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. And if you sign up today, you'll get 1 week on godating.ie absolutely free. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with godating.ie.
Paddy, I go, what? He goes, Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. And he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GAA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
9 minutes past 8 this morning. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. Keep your comments rolling in. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or of course, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream now. Mark Lawrenson, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you. You?
I'm okay.
Good.
I'm wondering what you think the difference between the two teams in the end was on Saturday night.
The goalkeeper. Listen, if Liverpool had played the same way as Madrid and won the 1-0, we'd be waxing lyrically about, how good they were defensively, the goalkeeper and all those kind of things. So I get all that, and Madrid, they won it, good luck to them, but they were battered. They were taken apart, weren't they? I mean, the goalkeepers, some of the saves the goalkeeper was making were unbelievable, and just one of those things, I'm afraid. Sometimes the best team doesn't actually win the big games.
Is there anything that will give Jurgen Klopp some pause for consideration about what he does into the future? Is there anything that you can do when you come up against a team who are as gifted as Real Madrid in terms of their playing personnel, but who are also so tactically, I don't know, is it astute to decide you're going to defend and just be very strong defensively? I don't know how astute that is. Like, it's
yeah. Well, it's
basic.
easy. It's easy. It's easy to do that. But I mean, it's and I get that. But I mean, the number of times Liverpool got in was just mad. But if you think about a final, there are relatively few clear-cut chances. Liverpool had lots, and you would expect Jurgen Klopp must have analysed that over the weekend and kind of thought, how on earth did we not score? You can't go on there and actually score for your team, can you? So they've not suddenly become a bad team. They just couldn't score. And, I previewed the game the other day and I was just saying about Madrid, which was, when you look at them, Chelsea should have beaten them, PSG should have beaten them, City should have beaten them, Liverpool should have beaten them. We all know that. But sometimes, your name's on it. And I just think that's exactly what it is with Real Madrid. And you don't have to go and look into too many kind of footballing reasons why. It's just the name was on it. And, the centre forward who's been brilliant doesn't have a shot at goal. So their plan worked perfectly. But just frustrated from Liverpool's point of view, because they should have won that comfortably. I think if they'd have scored one, they'd have scored two or three. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it did feel that way. It did feel like they were so dominant, particularly in that first half, where the shot was just not dropping and the opportunity wasn't just going in. How deflating is a defeat like this in terms of the longer term plans? I mean, it's great that you just blink it away.
Yeah, well, I won't say you blink it away. I mean, they will analyse it, but no, because in that competition, I really do believe Liverpool have been the outstanding team and they've cruised through everything. in all the games. They had that really iffy first half against Villarreal, and then reacted, which is a sign of a good team anyway. So no, I don't think Klopp will take too long to analyse that. And he's lost in finals before, as we all know. And I don't think he's even that kind of person, which is, we should have done this, we should have done that. He's very much, look, we did so many things right. We just, actually, the hardest thing in the game is scoring, and we just couldn't manage it. But I just go back to the fact they made so many chances that, you think you at least would have scored one goal to take it into extra time. So great for Real Madrid. Mind you, I listened to what I saw the interview that Perez gave. I mean, what the hell is he talking about him? He's on a different planet, him.
I missed that. What was he saying?
Well, he was saying, we know all about Liverpool and that, and Manchester City, because now they can afford to buy, the best players. They've got all this money. Well, hold on a minute. Didn't Real Madrid used to buy all the best players? And I just thought it was really, really petty. But I think that's part of the not having the European League, because, he was obviously one of the one of the leaders in that, and trying to get this European competition up and running. And I think he's got the massive hump with all the English teams, because obviously they all pulled out. So, but he was talking absolute, well, it begins with B and ends in S, and it's 8 letters.
He said effort, self-improvement, respect, humility and solidarity is what underpins this Real Madrid success. Of course, all characteristics of Florentino Perez.
Yeah. Listen, this is the Real Madrid that the Spanish FA bought the training ground off for a massively inflated fee, massively inflated, to keep them alive. So I'm absolutely totally not having him, really, at all. I like the manager, and I like they got some outstanding players, but I'm not having Perez. He's up himself.
He probably feels a little bit put out by the Mbappe situation a couple of weeks ago as well. So he's like, screw you, Paris. I came and I got what I really wanted.
Yeah, well, we'll give good luck to him. But, I mean, Mbappe's allowed to change his mind. I mean, and his deal he's got at PSG, not just the money, but it looks like he might even be choosing the next manager or the way they play and all those kind of things, which is mad, by the way, to give that to one of your players. But there you go. But, yeah, look, he said to Madrid in the end, I'm not coming. And Perez, obviously, he can't be beaten, can he? He's one of those guys. You cannot beat him. He's going to have the last word, and good luck to him.
It seems that this Real Madrid team is like the crankiest team ever, potentially, and as a club they're extremely cranky. Like you mentioned, the Perez stuff there, the guy who's always got to have the final word. Even Courtois afterwards saying that he needed to win on Saturday because I don't think I have enough respect, especially in England. Like, you have the disagreement between Tony Cruz and the German reporter afterwards. He feels that he was being asked a question that was too negative. It feels that, I'm not sure is this deliberate or not, but it just feels that this Real Madrid squad have a group of people who have a mentality about them where it's us against the world.
Yeah, which works in football. We've seen it on many, many occasions. And I think, for Cruz and Modric, coming towards the end of their careers and obviously proving a point. I think the thing with the goalkeeper, that was just, I don't know who voted for that. Whether it was the top 10, was it top 10 goalkeepers either in the Premier League or Europe or whatever, and he wasn't in it, which is wrong anyway, because he's always been a very, very good goalkeeper. So, obviously it fueled them and it worked. And he said, didn't he, before the game, Courtois said something about, we are Real Madrid and we always win. And he absolutely totally, he backed it up and he was right, wasn't he?
Do you see any commonality between Liverpool's performance on Saturday and maybe the failure to score goals in the 2 other cup finals this season?
No. And I'm not, the cup finals notoriously are extremely tight, aren't they? I think the only thing with Liverpool, you might say, in the last kind of quarter of the season, 1 or 2 of them started to look a little bit leggy. I mean, have they played something in the region of 60-odd games? Have you played every single one? So regardless of, diet, training, travel, all those kind of things, eventually it does catch up with you a little bit. But we thought Klopp sort of overcame that because, we know he's got 20 players. And And even there's cover for everybody. And, you know, if you shout at me like Trent Alexander-Arnold, and I'll say, well, Joe Gomez played right back and actually played really, really well. So you might say he's got cover there, but everywhere else he's got cover. Maybe they just got a little bit leggy. And also, you know, a little bit of expectation that this is a real chance to actually win the quadruple, which looks to me like I don't think it's ever going to be done. So, no, not really. I don't. You know, you look at the season, and I've seen most of the games live as well. Is they've been outstanding. They really seriously have, and just at the end, they've started to look a little bit tired. I mean, if I sat here with Klopp, he'd probably slaughter me saying that's not true, but they have done. I mean, Salah started to look a bit tired towards the end, Jota, and one or two others, and it just didn't work for them. But if you started the season, you know, just go back to our days, and, you know, obviously 4 competitions that we were always in, fortunately, and our boot room guys would say to us, you know, if you win something, one thing, we take it now, and the rest was an absolute bonus. And people used to think, oh, well, what are you going to win this year? And we went, no, it doesn't work that way, because 3 of the competitions are cup competitions, aren't they? And obviously it's the league. I think the league's always the important one, because that's, you know, the true thing about the length of the season, the games, the travel, all those injuries, all those kind of things. But I mean, they've won 2 competitions, and I watched a little bit of Sky, and they were saying, oh, well, does that mean it's not a particularly good season? And I'm thinking, like, really? They've won 2 competitions, and out of 4, and it's not a good season? No, that's absolute rubbish.
I also think that, like, they went to the very end, like, you know, any season where you're still in it with half an hour to go in the league and half an hour to go in the Champions League, like, that's an amazing achievement. And if football's only about victory, then that's not really the whole point of football.
No, listen, I'm pretty sure that'll be the first time ever that they played in every single game they could possibly play in. And that's as you rightly say, that's a feat in itself. So no, I think it's like heads high and stuff. The only probably excuse me, the cloud on the horizon now is Marnie going to Bayern Munich? What's happening with Salah? He's saying I'll still be here next season, but does he mean he's there and he's just going to see his last season out and clear off somewhere else? So there's an important few weeks coming up with Liverpool, I think.
If that does happen, if you know, it probably looks more likely than not that Mane will go at this stage, and it looks more likely than not that Salah will run his contract down and try and do what Mbappe has just done. And you know, if you were advising him, you'd probably advise him to do that. So what does that mean from Klopp's perspective? Like, does he try and convince Mane to stay for one last season and say, look, you're going to be going to the World Cup, we know what you're like, we're going to be able to manage you either side of that. You know, you trust us because we've done that before with the AFCON. So, or do you go, okay, I've got to take the 25 million or whatever money they offer, and then, you know, we've been good at recycling, and Luis Diaz comes in and starts. That's why we have Diogo Jota. What's your instinct?
Well, my instincts would be that I think they will have somebody lined up if Mane goes. I think they're talking about 42.5 mil, aren't they? So the way the club's been run, in all honesty, and you know, I bang on about recruitment. So the new head of recruitment, you would have thought has got a list of players if Marnie goes, a list of players if Salah goes, and that's just the way you've got to go, because you know, if you're going to pay Salah and Marnie absolute fortunes, then that's a real problem, because Van Dijk turns up at your door if you're the manager asking for a rise. The goalkeeper turns up at your door. And then it's like, well, you know, you've still got to run the football club. And in fairness, their football club is run absolutely brilliantly. And as you know, the number of players that they bought between the kind of 30 to 40 million region is, well, it's just been absolute quality. They've already been good players, as everybody knows, but Klopp's made them into, well, to be honest with you, he's made them into world-class players. So they know they can do it, but occasionally you get it wrong. You know, the guy you bring in or the guys you bring in might not quite work, but that's the gamble that you take. But there's a bigger thing here, which is obviously, you know, the future of the football club. I mean, the Americans that they must be looking at, obviously, was it $4.25 billion Chelsea have been bought for?
Yeah.
The Americans must be looking and thinking, you know what, if this starts to go awry, we can sell it and we can walk away. But they've been, I think I've said to you before, they've been brilliant with the manager. They realise what they've got. They trouble him. Well, they don't trouble him. I think they hardly ever even speak, only because they don't need to. They've got the chief exec at Liverpool, Billy, is American himself, and he runs the day-to-day, and he's very much switched on. And they've got a great thing going for them. It's just they only won 2 competitions out of 4. Tough.
One last thing. The goal and Trent's role in the goal is something that he's going to be singled out for again and again. It's people look at Trent and they go, and they've decided, oh, he's a liability in defence. That they're somewhat in the Gareth Southgate camp, and then others look at Trent and go, on balance, he's one of the best players in the world in terms of efficiency at creating chances. And so, is that not just a ball game with Trent? Sometimes you're going to get issues.
Yeah, good. I think that's the way the manager looks at it. He's very much, you take the rough with the smooth, but he's just not switched on defensively 100%. So, and obviously he loves to go forward and play. I mean his deliveries, we know, the course of the season has been outstanding. I don't know if anyone who's better at that position. Although the boy at Chelsea is a top player as well. But yeah, you just have to take that. I think what the positive far outweighs the negative, and generally, when he's played and Henderson's played, Henderson's kind of been the guy that kind of tucks in there. But everybody knew that it was going to be a problem with Vinicius, isn't it, Junior? So he's lightning quick, and that's how they got the goal. But look, at the end of the day, I mean, Liverpool should have scored 2, 3, or even 4. So, you got to live with it. I mean, and in our era, we played with Alan Kennedy, and Alan Kennedy scored in all the major finals. But God love him, he wouldn't be one of our best players. But you could look after him. I mean, Hansen played alongside him more than me because I was like the right centre back and Al was the left, and Alan Kennedy was obviously left back, and we cope with it. And that's all that you do. So if you've got a left back who's like scoring winning goals in cup finals, you then can't turn around and say, well, you know what, defensively he's a little bit iffy, because nobody's perfect, as we know.
And that it kind of shows the line that we expect from top class defenders in the modern game as well, that he didn't do much else wrong throughout the game. Like, I thought in the FA Cup final he was excellent defensively, but I guess being good defensively, the attitude is, well, that's your job, you don't get commended for it except when you make that one mistake.
Yeah, the only thing I would say now about that is the 2 fullbacks in Liverpool's game, in Liverpool play regularly. I mean, and I don't know, I've never looked at the stat. I would imagine they have more touches of the ball than nearly everybody in the side, apart maybe from Thiago on occasions. But so they are fullbacks, but basically they are wing backs without the title, aren't they? Just, I mean, how many times do you see Trent crossing it into the box?
Yeah.
And who's on the left side trying to get in there but Robertson? So that's just the way that they play. And Klopp's a very intelligent guy, and he knows that occasionally they'll get found out. But they've had an outstanding season, really seriously have. And all credit to them, and all credit to the manager, because the other thing that he's done, not just winning the trophies, he's managed the group. And to manage the group and keep everybody happy is unbelievably difficult. I mean, Fergie started this off, didn't he? And I think I've said this to you before, but Fergie started this off at Manchester United, where he had a really good squad, say 18 to 20 players, and he would say to somebody, say it was a Phil Neville, say, Phil, you're not playing tomorrow on Saturday, but on Wednesday we've got a game and you're playing. And that way you keep everybody happy. You don't have anyone trying to break your door down, saying, why am I not playing? Mind you, no one would be wise enough to break Fergie's door down. But, that's the thing with Klopp. And I think he's is everybody's friend in terms of the players. You can tell that he is, and he is actually more than a manager to them, and that's why he is so good, because he's got this skill that a lot of other people in the game just do not have.
I know you were watching the game in Dublin, but did any of your mates have a bad experience at the game?
No, nobody. No, but my mates are a little bit different, because they were flying in private jets and all that kind of stuff. So they were all sorted. But I mean, that was, I don't know. I mean, somebody said to me, well, no wonder with the French because of Brexit, because of Great Britain and Brexit and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, look, that's just, it's actually terrifying. I saw a few of the interviews, the one with the dad and the lad, and the lad had one or two issues. I mean, he got sprayed as well. I mean, can you imagine, being a father and that happening to your son? And he was only looked about 8 or 9, but yeah. I think the French were just like, we're going to treat you our animals. We're going to treat you like animals. And typical UEFA, they change their story, don't they? And as well as I do that probably nothing will come out of this at all. But hey, that's UEFA for you. And I'm afraid that's the French. And I love going to France, but it's just, that's the way they are, isn't it?
Oh, the French cops were the worst stereotypical French cops. They were pretty grim. Mark, great stuff. Thanks a million for being with us. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Mark Lawrenson giving us his thoughts there. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. What did you think of the football?
Yeah, like as we were saying earlier on, like I think that's like Real Madrid came with a very Real Madrid plan that everybody knew that they were going to bring to the table. I think the fact that they'd kind of toughened themselves up through this path to the final did them no harm whatsoever. The fact that they'd won their domestic title quite a while ago did them no harm whatsoever. And they're an absolutely brilliant team. Just because Liverpool and Manchester City were spoken about as the two best teams in Europe doesn't mean that Real Madrid can't also be an absolutely amazing team. Like, on paper, a brilliant team. And like, I think the Courtois situation, like talking about it, didn't get enough respect in England. Like, is that true?
It's something to 4-4-2. Like,
so that specific article that Mark was referring to there.
That's apparently where it came from.
Okay.
I mean, maybe he didn't get as much. Didn't they boo him? Did the Chelsea fans boo him at some point? Was there some kind of like, I think that might also be part of it. And like, this all goes back to, we were talking about this with Phil last Thursday. It's the Michael Jordanification of sport, where the elite are desperately trying to find the thing that they can pin on their metaphorical, what's the sporting equivalent of Pinterest? Like, that's it. I think that's all it is, isn't it?
Yeah, but they have that in spades, this Real Madrid team.
Was he definitely man of the match? Was there anybody else?
I'd probably give it to Courtois, right?
Who were the other contenders then?
Yeah. Well, Vinicius. I mean, it's very convenient to just give it to the winning goal scorer. He probably is. The significant moments were the missed opportunities for Liverpool I felt. And Courtois obviously was a pretty big stumbling block for Liverpool in those situations.
Like, the Salah right foot shot is actually right at him. Just to pick nits here, right? Because that's it. It's kind of the job. It is right at him. He gets a strong hand on it, and it doesn't go anywhere else. And maybe the save in the first half from Sadio Mane is better, is it?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah,
the post.
Yeah, the Mane save is probably a bit better, right? Like Mark was obviously saying there that Liverpool could have won 3 or 4, could have scored 3 or 4 goals. Like, their XG is actually higher than I thought it was. It is over 2 for Liverpool. The
XG was?
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff that gives you nightmares.
Yeah, I actually, because like as you say, like the shot was straight at Courtois for that Salah opportunity. I didn't think it was actually going to be that high. Like, and the other thing from the XG philosophy, obviously, is that Liverpool scored 0 goals from 6.12 in cup finals this season. So that's the thing that, well, it's not going to sting them, because in 2 of the 3 cup finals they ended up winning. So it's not something that they lose too much sleep about. And also as well, like, it's very, very interesting to kind of think about what the conversations will be in Liverpool this summer in the aftermath of Saturday. Is it something that they just put away and they're like, that's just one of those things, or can they, or do they have the luxury of actually digging down into what actually happened?
Like, if it had been 2 legs, if it was a 2-legged final, would you have given Liverpool? You probably would.
Well, yeah, if they but the things usually correct themselves statistically over a longer period of time.
And but the way that this competition is set up, that's not going to be possible. And also, Manchester City are such a machine that while Pep is there, you would expect them to win every league. Like they'll start every season. Pep is there as favourites to win the league,
and they've made a noticeable improvement before next season already, which we can point to. Liverpool, this Mane thing is just a little pebble in the shoe of Liverpool now, to say the least. Like, they need to probably make a decision on that pretty soon. And when I say they, I mean like Sadio Mane's representatives on behalf of Liverpool, on behalf of doing Liverpool a solid. They should probably be making their mind up pretty soon with regards to what happens. Like, Liverpool have set their price, as we mentioned there, like it'll be over 40 million quid. That's not exactly, well, it is something that in Liverpool's recent form can get you a good replacement, but there will still be a question of uncertainty around the replacement they get for that price, unless they just stump up a bigger price for somebody better. It's hard to even think off the top of your head who the potential replacement might be, because I think Jota, while very well established in the Premier League, kind of came out of the blue as a Liverpool player, and Luis Diaz obviously kind of came out of the blue as a Liverpool player. So Liverpool will surprise people probably with the signing that they make to replace Mane if he leaves, but that also comes with an element of risk, and Liverpool have a very good record on these risks paying off recently, so you'd back him to get it right, but you can't be fully sure.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Dahi says, go to Croke Park for games. You can't get to Clonliffe Road without going through the ticket checkpoints. My cousin was in Paris and said you could go right to the stadium without a single check. That is correct, Dahi. Dennis on Trent says, Trent Alexander-Arnold, clearly a great player, but also clearly not a great defender. People have a pop because the media and fans regularly describe him as the best right back in the world. He's clearly not. Is he the best right wing back in the world? Like, they don't really play with traditional fullbacks. They have a back four where we know who the two fullbacks are, but they're not really fullbacks. They're actually wing backs. And maybe if you think of him as a wing back, you don't expect him to be the best defender in the world, but he's certainly the best right wing back. Trent's defending was excellent all game. Then that happens. Cruel world, says Brian. I do wonder if they'd all stepped up. Like, there's a possibility for them to step up, and then he's offside. He didn't. Waiting for the Munster fans to celebrate their third star this weekend, not realising that if France beat Ireland in the Six Nations or World Cup, your man ROG will be one reason. Plus, he turned Munster down. I don't know, did he turn Munster down? Like, it's just not the... Yeah, it's not the same. He's on a different trajectory from Munster at the moment. Alan says, performance of the season from La Rochelle. Leinster didn't play their best, gutting. Still don't think Leinster bottled it, just didn't peak. And La Rochelle played better than I thought they could. Rugby is about size. The biggest team won, says MOC. I don't know if it's that straightforward. We should probably just decide we're giving up on rugby as a country and we're going to put all our effort into football. We'll give you the sevens. You can have the sevens, but we're not big enough. So all the good rugby players should now be Gaelic footballers or centre backs.
Yeah, Dublin would win even more All-Irelands though.
I met David Myler after the game.
Oh yeah?
David Myler's huge.
Yeah?
He is absolutely huge.
Yeah, professional athlete David Myler.
He's like, I was kind of looking over him going, I did not realise, because we've like only ever met over the miracle of Zoom, but like in person, I can see why you're sticking him straight in the team. Very impressive specimen.
And like, did this kind of like stunt your conversation a little bit? Like, were you just
it was
there
after the game, and he'd actually had not a great experience getting in, and and I had to go meet people, but I was like, wow, you're very impressive.
It's a good game, Ger, and Ger's just there in stunned silence.
Anyway, no, it's because normally you meet people and they're like smaller in real life. Not the case.
David's taller in real life.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Big reaction to Mark Lawrenson being in studio with John and Johnny and Dan on Saturday afternoon. You can get that on the OTB football football stream. Right, Team OTB are taking on Triathlon this June. It's all in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. Check out whoop.com for more. My sleep stats over the weekend, not great.
Oh, what are they telling you?
About 4 hours.
Okay, you can live on that for maybe 1 or 2 days.
You can subsist, I would say. Here's Olympian and Irish triathlete Caroline Hayes giving us some pointers. We called this segment Triathlon for Dummies, and we were certainly the dummies. Have a look.
Okay guys, thanks for coming today. So you've all signed up for the triathlon. You've 10 days of training left, and I suppose what I'm here to do is just kind of make sure that you approach the next 10 days as aggressively as you've been approaching, you know, the build up to the race in general. So obviously today's topic is triathlon for dummies. Okay, do you know what? I'll start with it. Does anyone know what a triathlon is?
What if, in a hypothetical situation, you hadn't done a huge amount of training up to this point and you had 10 days left? If there are people out there who are looking for that type of advice,
Not me, but
what would you be saying? Other people on the team, maybe, yeah?
You're obviously talking about other people, not yourselves.
No, just
okay. So yeah, I mean, if you've absolutely nothing done, you haven't even gone to your local pool, you haven't swum a width in about 10 years, I'd say a couple of Hail Marys.
Would you go at it like? Would you sort of try? Would you not? Okay, there's no point.
I think you'll be fine, right? Well, I don't, but like I think you'll be fine.
Nothing to worry about here on
Spot it is this Saturday.
Sunday.
Okay, you got an extra day. That helps. And what's on your to-do list to get prepared between now and then?
Well, one of the things that we went through in that longer piece, which I think will be released later on this week, is the equipment. And there was definitely have to think this through, like the bit where you're taking off your wetsuit and then transferring to something other than a wetsuit is like you have to practice this.
Can anybody look good taking a wetsuit off?
I'm not sure it's possible. Maybe like, you know, if you're
Michael Phelps,
young and healthy.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you're at least young, but you know, you're getting there on the healthy front. So maybe you should try this. I mean, this would be.
Just try taking off a wetsuit. That does sound pretty torturous.
This maybe next year that could be it. You could just do the transition part of it. Yeah. I don't know. I think that it's going to be a little bit tricky because you do your training separately, right? You don't train for the transition bit, and then you get there on the day and you're like falling over.
And like, should you not train for transition bit?
I mean, yes, Owen. You should.
Is that not something that you can actually prepare for?
Thanks, Dad.
Is that not something that you can absolutely prepare for?
I'm sure, yeah. However, I've decided that my ambition here is not to do this fast; it's to do it well.
Okay, yeah.
I will do it well. I will finish. What are you laughing at?
I just have this image of like a strange man in the North Dublin area projectile vomiting while getting out of his wetsuit in preparation for this weekend.
Who are you talking about? Thanks for your continued support, Owen.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, you do have this ability to kind of like come up with like a performance out of nowhere. Like you won't finish last.
I mean, I might. I did the last time. Literally finished last.
I know, but you were like up against actual athletes. Like, I mean, you're not going to finish last in the OTB team, are you?
Well,
who else is doing the full? Who's else doing the full triathlon?
Young, fit people.
Okay.
Tommy Rooney.
You're going to beat Adrian
Shane
Barry
Hannon,
in the swim.
Ashling O'Reilly.
Okay, but your task here, your job now, is to beat Adrian in the swim. That's your one to win. And what other non-young people are doing?
Brian O'Driscoll's doing the cycle after that part.
Yeah, there's one issue there, obviously.
Yeah, he's going to kill me.
He's Brian O'Driscoll.
Yeah, but then Nathan's doing the run.
Okay, so they're your two targets. Can you beat Adrian in the swim and Nathan in the run?
Probably can't beat Nathan in the run. Okay. He's got like a good half a decade on me, even though it doesn't look that way.
I know. So that comes down to one last thing, really. It's just swim.
Yeah. I think I could probably like lean on Adrian literally, as opposed to metaphorically, in the water. I could lean on him, and that would like definitely cause him significant issues.
It certainly would. Life-threatening issues. I
don't want to threaten his life. I don't want to, that would be bad, just in case anything happens to him. I feel a little bit guilty afterwards.
Yeah, you probably would
potentially end up in prison, and that wouldn't be good. But I think it's reached that stage now where you're in that sweet spot of the adrenaline started to kick in already a week out. I'd say maybe a weekend in Paris. Not the best preparation,
yeah,
but I will at least be off the booze for the next week.
But that's the most important thing. Did you indulge much at the weekend? You got to Champions League final. You're in one of the better cities in the world. Of course you did. Yeah. But did the triathlon come into your head at any point?
No.
Okay.
You've got to separate your life into these little compartments, and in the style of Homer Simpson, beat it down until you never think about it again.
You're tapering.
Well, we did talk a lot about tapering and how real athletes would be legitimately in the taper. You do a hard enough run 3 or 4 days out. I'm probably not going to do any running until the day itself because I don't really like running and I find it very bad for me. But the swimming and cycling, I'll do a bit of that this week.
Okay. I think you'll be fine.
Thanks for the vote of confidence.
Yeah.
Team OTB are taking on Tri-Thigh this June. Today is the 30th of May. It is next week. It's all in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. Check out whoop.com for more. And that full piece with Caroline Hayes will make sure that gets broadcast or podcast at least, because there was definitely some funny bits in that where she's a very interesting athlete, like a qualified doctor who is also representing Ireland in the Olympics. You know, one of those underachievers in life. It's 8:42. Carl Mullaney's with us. Carl, good morning to you.
Hey lads, how's it going?
What is going on?
So we just have the draw made for the Tailteann Cup quarter-finals. So here it is. In the northern section, Leitrim at home to Sligo and Fermanagh at home to Cavan. And then in the southern section, Carlow versus Westmeath and Offaly against New York. So that draw.
So just give us to us again. We've never seen these pairings before. Who is it?
Leitrim versus Sligo in Carrick and Shannon.
Okay, that's never happened.
Against Cavan.
Fermanagh against Cavan.
Yeah. Carlow at home to Westmeath and Offaly against New York.
Okay. New York at least is a good bit of narrative attached to that. That's the I forgot his name, the Offaly supporter. He'll have seen Offaly. He'll have been in New York watching them obviously play earlier a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And obviously his beloved Offaly now at home to New York in that fixture. So
yeah. So the ties in next weekend. I think that's.
It's in New York. Yeah.
No, they're in Ireland.
Yeah. So,
right.
I think that's a reasonable enough draw, to be honest. I think
it's just that they're games we see every year.
Yeah, Leitrim and Sligo is going to get a lot of interest. Fermanagh against Cavan probably will generate a lot of interest.
I wouldn't have minded seeing Sligo versus Cavan, Leitrim versus Fermanagh, or Leitrim versus Offaly, and I don't know.
I think in terms of crowd numbers, though, you're going to get a bigger crowd for Leitrim against Sligo than you would Leitrim against Fermanagh, for example. Carlow at home to Westmeath. That's a good draw for Carlow. They had a great win yesterday against Tipperary. So, I think, are you saying Westmeath are probably the favourites
for that game against Carlow?
For the overall competition now?
Themselves are Cavan.
Offaly,
would they be third favourites potentially?
Yeah.
Leitrim getting the win over Antrim at the weekend as well was just such a step forward for them, and that, and also, as you say, the Carlow win against Tipperary were the two really striking results in the weekend. Those results for me are exactly why the Tailteann Cup exists, and the sort of positivity that you can gain from it. They were technically upsets.
And the Tailteann Cup games this weekend were the games of the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that when you have these teams in a second tier competition, you're just increasing the probability of the upsets. Of course you can have brilliant giant killings in the provincial championships, but it's just very, very unlikely because of the gulf in class between them. But it seems that we're getting a bit of excitement out of this thing so far.
Yeah, I think it was a great weekend for the Tailteann Cup, to be honest. The matches, generally speaking, across the board were very, very competitive. Lots of open kind of stuff. And now these teams are all one game away from Croke Park in a game on national television, which is the real carrot for the likes of, Leitrim have a home match now to get over Sligo to get to Croke Park. At Carlow as well, at home to Westmeath, is an opportunity for them to get to Croke Park. So I think this is where the focus really comes on the competition, and the possibilities that it presents to the counties comes into focus, I think, from now on. So I think it's been a good start, I have to say, to the Tailteann Cup, and hopefully it continues.
And so Sligo feeling confident?
No, Leitrim will be favourites based on the weekend. Sligo were very lucky to beat London. Went to extra time and they saved a penalty in extra time. Leitrim had a smashing win against Antrim and played very well by all accounts. I caught some of it on the radio in the car on the way down, and they were well ahead. And Antrim, that's an Antrim team that I know they lost some players, but they were pushing for promotion from Division 3, so Leitrim will be high on confidence. Offaly were good against Wicklow by all accounts as well. They got over that one pretty comfortably, and Wicklow have been in good form. So I would say you're looking at Westmeath, Offaly and Cavan obviously as the three favourites in the minute. And Fermanagh had a good win over Longford, got a late goal to win that game. So yeah, I think those three teams that we mentioned, and then beyond that, Leitrim will have a lot of confidence. Sligo will hopefully get a couple of guys back. Niall Murphy's carrying a bit of a knock. They'll hopefully have him back for next weekend. But I think these ties will generate quite a bit of interest, yeah.
Okay, we have the qualifiers next weekend, and then after that the draw will take place that pits the beaten provincial finalists against the teams in the qualifiers. So all of the games from this point forward should be relatively good, although you can see...
This weekend should be an excellent weekend of football.
Yeah, like you can see, it's going to be difficult for Kildare to recover against one of those teams in the qualifiers, because most of the teams in the qualifiers are good.
Yeah.
And also, what kind of form will Limerick be in when they're playing?
Who knows? Like, I took another drubbing. Like, but then on the flip side of that is, like, you look at a team like Donegal, who should be one of the favourite teams coming out of the provincial losers, but they'll also be just on such a downer after yesterday as well, given the manner of the defeat and just the repetitive nature of their defeats over the last couple of years.
It's very dependent on the draw, though, isn't it? Because you have Cork and Louth, and you have
Meath and Clare. So, with no disrespect, but they're, in terms of league ranking, would be the lowest teams that are left. That's who the Donegals want. That's who Kildare probably want. That's who they all want, really, isn't it? Yeah.
You want to avoid the winners of Mayo Monaghan and Armagh Tyrone.
Yeah, and I think the same probably goes for teams in the All-Ireland quarterfinals as well. Like, as you say, next Monday we'll probably have a very good idea of the bracket for the entire All-Ireland Championship. But I think in particular, I'd be particularly concerned about Tyrone if they win this weekend. All of a sudden their season is back in the line. Now, I do think that because of the situation that we've seen all year, they are particularly vulnerable this weekend, and Armagh could well beat them, especially given the fact that the game is on in the athletic grounds. But I think that this weekend could be a springboard for a team like Tyrone. It would be nothing new whatsoever, though, were we to see Mayo using this weekend as a springboard and go on a sort of run.
Yeah.
But I think everybody needs to be on red alert about the Tyrone football team. Apparently very good at football. I'm not sure if anybody realises that.
But aren't Dublin and Kerry on the same side of the draw in the All-Ireland series? So, I mean, it's a huge opportunity for Galway and Derry.
I think Derry will
huge
make
opportunity.
Again, we'll know next Monday probably a lot more, but I think Derry are in a very good position to make the All-Ireland final now. I do think, though, I think from maybe the perspective of people, for Dublin and Kerry, I think yesterday's Ulster final result was a good result for them. I think Derry coming through the back door in that All-Ireland quarter-final weekend would have been a massive danger, would have been the biggest possible danger to those two teams. And I think now that they won, they're out of the picture. I think Donegal are a much more known quantity, and I think Kerry or Dublin would beat them in a quarter-final if they make it that far, and that is a draw.
Yeah, okay.
And are Derry ahead of Galway in the pecking order for the All-Ireland series? So
you have them, by the virtue of what you're saying there.
Well, granted, on the teams they've beaten so far,
so they're ahead of them in the power rankings.
They are.
Yeah. Okay.
But Galway obviously move up a place. Galway will probably leapfrog Mayo now, officially, after yesterday. I was concerned that Galway were going to lose to Roscommon after they beat Mayo a few weeks ago, and that obviously didn't happen. And I think that actually in the end 3 points reflects well on Roscommon after yesterday. So I think Galway truly the best team in Connacht on current form at this point, and like they're looking at that as a potential All-Ireland semi-final against Derry if the draw goes their way in the quarter-finals.
Again, with travel, etc., I only really caught the last 10 minutes of the Connacht final, where it was like, this game is home and hose, done and dusted, absolutely over, and then you're like, they're still somehow managing to let the zombie back into the game.
And they did that against Mayo too, which is a big worry for Galway.
And it's been part of this team's makeup.
Yeah.
So you would just be a little bit concerned against a good side, like one of the top tier Division 1 teams.
Yeah, like at the same time though, I think that's something that they could maybe correct and improve on over the next little while.
Maybe the game was done, and so therefore it was a bit of complacency.
Possibly, but that's not the winning mentality you want to see.
No.
But like another thing that Galway can think is, like, Paul Conroy scored 1 point from play yesterday. It was late in the game. It felt like garbage time at the time. So that's another thing they can point to and say, well, that's not going to happen again. He was marked well. He'll probably be better on the scoring front anyway the next day. So I'd be quite excited if I was a Galway fan, especially considering you're on the opposite side of the draw.
I agree. I think Galway could just give it a real rattle this year,
All right, what else going on?
Well, let's just recap those provincial final results from yesterday. Galway beat Roscommon by 219 to 216 to win the Connacht title, and Derry beat Donegal by 116 to 114 after extra time in Clones to win the Ulster title. In boxing today, 2 Irish boxers bid for gold medals at the Men's European Championships in Armenia. Dylan Eagleson meets French fighter Bilal Banama in the bantamweight final, while middleweight Gabriel Dawson goes up against England's Lewis Richardson in their final bout. Both men into the ring in Armenia after 3 o'clock Irish time. 7 celebrations for Nottingham Forest yesterday. They're heading back to the Premier League after 23 years away. They beat Huddersfield Town by 1-0 in the Championship playoff final. They were bottom of the table when Steve Cooper took over in September, but they ended the season in 4th, and an own goal from Levy Colwood at Wembley helping send Forest back to the top tier. In tennis, Rafa Nadal and Novak Djokovic will come face to face in the quarter-finals of the French Open. 13-time winner Nadal booked his place in the next round with the win in 5 sets over Felix Auger-Aliassime, while Djokovic had an easier clash in his fourth round meeting with Diego Schwartzman, which he won in straight sets. On the court today, Stefanos Tsitsipas looking to reach the quarter-finals. He takes on Denmark's Holger Rune. Later, world number 2 Daniil Medvedev goes up against Marin Cilic. In the women's singles, top seed Iga Swiatek battles against Zheng Qinwen of China in the 4th round. In golf last night, informed Scotty Scheffler was denied another PGA Tour title. He suffered a playoff defeat to Sam Burns at the Charles Schwab Challenge, the Masters champion, and Burns finished on 9 under par. Burns made birdie at the first playoff hole to take victory. In Formula 1 yesterday, Red Bull's Max Verstappen extended his advantage at the top of the Drivers' Championship to 9 points. That's after a 3rd place finish at the Monaco Grand Prix. The standings leader crossed the line behind Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and race winner Sergio Perez. There was a lengthy delay there to the start because of rain, and a red flag for barrier repairs meant the event was shortened due to time restrictions. And finally, there's racing today in Ballinrobe, where the first of 7 is off at 5:10 this evening.
All right, Carl, good stuff from that. More from Carl across the day on OTBSports.com. Now, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Time for us to turn our attention to rugby. Very quickly, one comment before we get to that. Bar Ulster Gaelic football is over as a provincial competition. Despite the best efforts of teams like Kildare, they're still miles behind any notion of winning Leinster, never mind in All-Ireland. But Dobbs has the solution. It'd be great if they could just run the provincial championships like an under-10 blitz of a Saturday morning, free up 2 months in the congested calendar and save the rest of us watching that nonsense.
Good idea. Let's do it.
15 minutes aside. No, 15-minute games, and that's it. And then at the end of it, there's a trophy and there's a little injection of cash into the players' funds. And then we park that and we play the real stuff.
I think so. I think that could work.
People might even show up to it.
Yeah, like
you could have a free kick competition or what's the equivalent of the dunk competition?
Yeah, exactly. The solo while looking up competition.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
That's the new skill on the block. So may as well. That's the thing. It's like standing in the sun. I didn't put on factor 50 for this. It's kind of what I felt at the weekend. Like it's like why are we here?
How quickly was that game over? I literally heard nobody say anything about the game. Clifford wasn't playing. Oh, Clifford's not playing. What's going on? It's like, well, they realised this game doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, there was only 9 points in it at half time, and it was 23 points at the end.
Right. Oh, so they good second half from Kerry. They won the second half.
They won. Yeah, they won the second half. It was somebody I was with on Saturday said that Desi Farrell should use the Peter Keane line at full time of the Kildare game. You know, if you take the goals out of it, there's not actually that much of a difference between the two teams. And if you did take the goals out of the Dublin game, there would have been only 1 point in it, whereas Kerry kicked loads of points.
6 scores in it, you would say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Therefore, the point kicking extravaganza from Kerry is more impressive on earlier on Saturday, of course.
Limerick just didn't show up.
Yeah, not really. Yeah. Oh, it's just like such a non-event. It's not even like, what can you even say about it?
We'll get to that in a little while more with Antony Moyles. If you've got a view, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. We're going to speak with Alan Quinlan now. Here's a taste of what Ronan O'Gara said to BT after La Rochelle beat Leinster. Have a listen.
We did a lot of homework, I think, in the fact that the Connacht game in Galway and the Leicester game gave me enough ammunition to work with. We knew also that Leinster are usually out of sight in the first half. So at half-time, even though it was only 5 points, it felt like a defeat for us. But the boys were like sulking. I was like, what's your problem, because the data shows in the last 20 that we score 60% of our scores while Leinster do it in the first 20.
Yeah, there's a good bit more there where he's talking about that. The bits in the Connacht game in Galway and the Leicester game, and he felt he saw something different. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
This is like an all-time great Irish coaching performance from O'Gara. Like, we should start there as opposed to what happened Leinster, because his reputation is now secure, and the opportunities that are going to come his way over the next decade as a result of actually getting over the line in this competition, fair play to him. But in the here and now, What's your take on what O'Gara has achieved?
It's incredible, really. And with respect to ROG, I think none of us really saw this happening. I had his kids before the game giving out to me about doing the TikTok video for EPCR the morning of the match, predicting Leinster would win by 8 to 10 points. I said it with G last week as well. And that's based on the performances Leinster have put in, particularly the quarter-final, semi-final. But look, obviously knowing Rog the way I do and having played with him, no matter what the odds are against him, he'll always believe that whether he was a player or a coach, that he can win. He has that winning mentality, and it obviously translated into his players, and they believed as well. And I think probably the most impressive thing was their never say die attitude and the desire and the will to win. They kept going. At 18-10, we all thought it was gone for La Rochelle, and that Leinster would just manage the game at that point with 15-20 minutes to go and just see it out, really. That was probably the predictable result. Nobody really saw that one coming, but I did say to people, and I had this feeling during the week, that La Rochelle are a very, very resilient team. There's a hardiness and a toughness about them that, you compare them to Toulouse in the semi-final. Toulouse have so many superstars, loads of guys in the French team. La Rochelle don't. Of course, they have 3 or 4 international players who are playing regularly, but their collective drive and desire was what got them the results. If you look at the game tactically, Ger, and it was just one of those things that you talk about the masterclass of ROG, obviously to get them motivated and the emotion right, to tactically get them really organised defensively, not making a lot of mistakes. I think if La Rochelle lost the game, they certainly would have looked at their discipline, because they gave away a lot of silly penalties. And it's probably a little bit like myself when I played. You kind of have that kind of drive and emotion to really be confrontational, and that's the way they had to play. And they jumped the gun a lot of the time. They gave away lots of penalties. Probably lucky they didn't have someone in the bin for those penalties. I know Laval was sin bin for the trip in Gibson Park, but that kind of high pitch emotion that they had continued for the whole game, and they did stop Leinster. The wraparound passes, the accuracy that we usually see from Leinster when they're so dominant. They didn't have that. They tried it a few times, and just the end result was La Rochelle, somebody got their timing right and they broke it down and forced Leinster to be inaccurate. So it was a dogfight, and Leinster got dragged into a dogfight by a very resilient, powerful team who had their own opportunities. I was surprised how ambitious they were with the ball, particularly in the first half as well. They were going wide a lot, and it was a really intense game that La Rochelle just never gave up, and I think they rattled Leinster.
O'Gara was saying afterwards that he looked at the Leinster and Connacht game, he looked at the Leinster and Leicester game, and he picked bits from those games that gave him hope and a game plan for Saturday. So what did he see, do you think, in those games that informs his approach to Saturday?
Probably the game in Galway, and I look back at the games as well, and I thought, is there any chink in the armour here? And no matter how good any team is, there's probably moments in games that you look at where the opposition had you under pressure. How did they do that? I think both of them were kind of responses to Leinster being ahead, weren't they? In the Connacht game in Galway, it ended up being very close in the end, 26-21, I think that game, first round 16 game was. The way they fought back, the way they were really aggressive, Connacht, and put pressure on Leinster and kept the ball for long periods. The Leicester game, probably the response after being 20-0 down as well. They upped their intensity. It's a reaction when you're behind on. So most teams will do that in any sport, but I think he obviously saw some stuff there that if you play with that abandonment and that bit of aggression and really kind of tempo to your game that maybe that will not suit Leinster, and that you can ask some questions if you keep the ball for a long period. So that probably give them a little bit of hope. And that's what we all spoke about, wasn't it, going into the game? How would La Rochelle, shut them down, shut their Leinster's really cohesive attack down, and that quick ruck speed. The against Toulouse, it was so impressive. It was 1.5 seconds the ball is coming out. Go after the set piece as well, and I think they did so in the scrum on Saturday. With the replacements that came on, Wardy, Slavi, and Facundo Bosch, the Argentinian hooker. Their impact off the bench was really telling in that last 20 minutes as well. So no kind of one thing that you could pick out, but I would say being aggressive, confrontational, and holding on to the ball, that probably would have given them hope. And there's nothing obvious in any of that, I think. But I think the belief of La Rochelle, they're a very physical side, and I think that's what they, taking all the tactics out of it, I think that's what they really needed to bring. 80 minutes of being really physical and winning collisions, and they didn't always do that. Leinster had them on the rack a few times, but I just think they unsettled Leinster's attack, and that's Leinster's biggest strength, where they've punished teams this year.
From Leinster's perspective, then, how psychologically damaging is it that they have been unable to get over the line when they're in a winning position with 20 minutes left to go, with 5 minutes left to go, with 3 minutes left to go?
It'll be a hard one to get over. I think, given it's always difficult, Ger, when you're favourites and you're expected to win, and you're fancied to win, I should say. It was strange. I was down around the touchline before the game and just watching both sets of coaches, and I was kind of thinking to myself, as a player, when I was back there, like, somebody's going to be heartbroken today. And you look at Leo Cullen, Ronan O'Gara, Donncha Ryan, Felipe Cantapomi, Lancaster, all walking around and doing their jobs, and you're just thinking, I was kind of visualizing who's going to have that success and that glory, and how is it going to pan out, I think. And it's about getting it right. And I think what went wrong for Leinster was probably very small margins, I think, and it will hurt them a lot, and it will psychologically damage them. But a lot of their players haven't experienced this. I know they had a lot of experience in the side, 6 or 7 fellas who've been there, but there's a number of Leinster players who haven't been in a final before. They're on the scene relatively. They're pretty new to this. In the last couple of years, playing for Ireland and playing at this level in European rugby, and it does. Of course, it affects you, but you learn from it as well. And I think Leinster have evolved so much in their attack, and they probably have to realise that it's not all about attack. I thought Johnny Sexton going off, and he got bruised and battered. I thought he was a big loss to them. I know probably people are questioning the decision to run the ball out from his own try line, but I think that when Breece Doolan had that drop goal, I think it was the way the ball bounced and came straight back to the in-goal line, the try line. He wasn't sure, was he going bringing it back over if he touched it down? And then he passed to Hugo Keenan. They got tackled there. Bouguerie, the hooker, gets a brilliant turnover, and they score a try in the corner. I think that was the kind of moment in the match really that really turned that second half and gave La Rochelle that hope that, particularly they kicked into the corner and scored. So, look, psychologically, I think it'll be damaging, but not to the point that this team won't bounce back, because they're too good. They still have a lot of youth on their side. And look, they're hard to win. These competitions are hard to win, and maybe Leinster maybe it was a bad thing that they were so dominant against Leicester and Toulouse, and that they probably left their worst performance of the year for the final. And that was, look, a lot of that was down to La Rochelle as well, and that fight that I was speaking about. So it'll be difficult to pick it up, because this was one that they really had one hand on the trophy before the whistle kicked off, or the ball kicked off in that final.
So this is the 30th of May today. The World Cup is next winter, 2023. Do we still think that Sexton starts 5 games or maybe more for Ireland, or do we now just have to bite the bullet and say Sexton needs to be on the field at the end of games, and the only way to do that is to bring him on after an hour?
I don't know, Jared. I haven't really thought about that. I think it's when a team loses, you start picking out individuals and picking out people and what went wrong and what you can change. I just think it wasn't meant to be for Leinster. I just think a couple of things went wrong for them, and like I said, I was down to La Rochelle's brilliance and quality and fight.
We had a lot of text earlier on, I suppose, about how there's a blueprint here to stop Ireland, and you slow down the quick ruck ball, you slow down Gibson Park's impact on the game by slowing down that quick ruck ball, and all of a sudden Ireland's creativity and Leinster's creativity will be swallowed up. So if you're the All Blacks watching this, you're like, okay, I see something here. And I don't know, in those circumstances, maybe you have no chance if somebody else starts the game. That might be the case. It'd be good to find out, though. Like, if Sexton's only ever going to play 60 minutes, are you better making sure that he's at least on the field for the end of the game, so that there is all of that game nous and intelligence steering you out of difficult situations?
Again, I'm not sure, because it might be something to look at, and maybe in the next 14 or 15 months or whatever it is to the World Cup, that we may see that situation where he is on the bench, and I know psychologically, if you were in a good, and from a scoreline point of view, if you were ahead, having someone like him come on and close out a game, it wouldn't be a problem to him. I think he can do both. I don't know if you're going to have a happy Johnny Sexton if you're not starting him, but it is an option. It is something that could happen, but it depends what the other situation is with the other fly halves, and if they're playing well enough to start the game and put pressure on Johnny Sexton. I think the performances he's shown this year has shown his quality. He hasn't played a lot of games, and we heard Hugo Mola talking about that after the Toulouse game. The number of games. Intimac at 27, started 27 games for this year. And Johnny had started, I think, 11 or 12 and been involved in 15 in total. He was off the bench for 3 or 4. So you are going to have to manage that situation going forward with him. But it is something that maybe an option. But again, I wouldn't like to think that God, Leinster were beaten up here and that it's a real worry and a concern. I think their game management deserted them a little bit. When they were 18-10 up, I think there was a real crucial moment in Leinster's, in the La Rochelle half, where Leinster were really looked like they were stretching La Rochelle, and they were going for it. And Liebenberg, Vian Liebenberg got an incredible turnover, maybe on the 10-yard line. And I think that was, again, you talk about big moments in games. They were hanging on for dear life. They had 2 or 3 players down on the ground, and the 6 for La Rochelle comes up with an incredible turnover. Now, the scrum half, Bergeron, taps, and he went. I don't think his teammates would have thanked him, but it just showed that it gave them a little bit of a lifeline, that turnover. There was a big emotional effect. And at that stage, Leinster looked like one or two more rucks, and look, La Rochelle were gone. They were going to score a try. And then for those 15 minutes, I just thought Leinster probably should have kicked a little bit more. So it wasn't down to that they were bruised and battered, but they just kept, for some reason, they weren't able to just get away from La Rochelle. So I think when they look back tactically, I thought they should have kicked a little bit more in those last kind of 15, 20 minutes and tried to play territory and pin La Rochelle back a little bit. But Sexton going off was he didn't go off because of tactics. He went off because he had an ankle problem, and Jonathan Dante charged at him a few times and had him involved in some big collisions. So I think if Sexton stayed on the field there, even for another 7 or 8 minutes, they probably would have seen the game out. They needed to get into the 73rd, 74th minute. I know Ross Byrne kicked the penalty to put him 21-17 up, to stretch it to 4 points. And but just that reaction was incredible from La Rochelle.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Good stuff. Alan, thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lad. Thanks.
Alan Quinlan giving us his thoughts on the weekend's rugby. Your views can come through in the comments on the YouTube stream. You can always text us 0879 180 180. It's 11 minutes past 9. We're going to take a quick break. We're back talking Gaelic football with Antony Moyles next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Hurling Pod on OTB Sports.
You listen to this, right? I have to go out Ireland Lane. Another 100 of the year candidate.
What I'm saying is I'd have to take out. Okay, I take out Conor Whelan then. Conor Whelan has to be.
That's it. I quit.
Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Skehill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season. Subscribe to the GAA podcast feed on the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at godating.ie we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. And if you sign up today, you'll get 1 week on godating.ie absolutely free. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with godating.ie.
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue is heading west, and they want you to join them. Paddy, James and host Tommy Rooney are Castlebar bound on Thursday, June 2nd, and just announced to be joining them on stage is the Mayo legend Keith Higgins. They'll relive old Dublin, Kerry and Mayo battles at Croker and beyond, as well as analysing Championship 2022. That's the Football Pod at the Royal TF Castlebar. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees. Get yours now at otbsports.com/events.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 13 minutes past 9. Anthony Moyles is here. Anthony, how are you?
I am good, Jer. Yourself?
I now know your pain.
Yeah.
You'd be glad to know, actually. I thought of you at Stade de France. It was late in the second half, and I was like, I'm a bit hungry and a bit peckish here. Sold out of food. They were sold out of food. I was like, there you go.
See?
But that was kind of before I realised just how much mayhem there'd been outside. So it turns out that they couldn't organise a piss up in a brewery.
Yeah. Well, there must be the same consultation parties must be involved in both national stadiums. Surely there's a stadium in one of our capital cities in Europe that actually does it correct.
Food.
Yeah, and get you in on time.
Just wanted a bit of food. Yeah. I mean, look, there was no crowd control issues for the Leinster final. The only thing of interest were the Meath women's footballers, who unfortunately, from their perspective, were beaten by the Dubs. But there's a proper rivalry brewing there.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched a good bit of it. Meath will feel that they were probably hard done by on a few different, shall we say, controversial decisions, but it is an absolute proper rivalry. I'll tell you what's refreshing to hear is both managers actually having kind of veiled goes at each other again.
Right.
You know, like Mick Bohan a couple of weeks ago was kind of questioning the whole physicality in women's football, and like, Meath seemed to bring a certain brand to it. Then of course Eamon Murray had a bit of a go yesterday about it, but that's rivalry, Ger. Like, when was the last time you heard a Leinster manager?
Sure, who can?
Did Jim Gavin have to ever say anything about Meath in the last 7 or 8 years at Kildare, right? Did anyone ever? Now it's just,
They were irrelevant.
Exactly.
And they still are.
Correct. So there's you don't have to be veiled or otherwise. You can just be, actually nearly feeling sorry for the other team, which is a very, very sad state of affairs, which, listen, we've gone over 1,000,001 times. I watched the Kildare-Derry or Dublin game closely, and I watched it back for my sins. Would you believe? I'm telling you, when I watched it back, I want to try to see where exactly Dublin are, and are there areas where Derry, whoever else, can get at them. And I think there are.
Presumably a rock-solid defensive structure where you prevent them from scoring goals would be a good starting point.
That would help. That would certainly help, yeah. And not being, 3 or 4 goals down after 7 or 8 minutes would definitely help. It's amazing. Every single Kildare goal there was nothing. Okay, Costello had a great finish, the one where he steps inside onto his left foot. Fantastic finish, great balance. But no other goal was, you go, wow, that was, how did they do that? Every single goal was preventable by Kildare. Every single goal. Like, I mean, I'm not, like, I literally went back and I was obsessed with it. I started taking pictures of it yesterday. And some of the defending was out. It was just so bad. It was just so bad. Like under 12 stuff, you know, not going with players, being sucked towards the ball. A ball comes on off the post, you know, not knowing where your man is, which happened in the Kerry game too, you know, being completely unaware that the man is behind you. Just bad communication, fellas being lazy. Like the first goal Kilkenny gets, he actually runs past his marker. So he's out the field. He goes past his marker watches the crossfield ball, comes in, completely ball watches, loses him, and next thing he's like, oh, and he's away from him. O'Callaghan gets it and just slips it inside. Now people go, brilliant from Con, great movement, but that's where the goal came from. So actually, I think Kildare, when they look at it, it'll be video nasty time this week and they'll absolutely rip them asunder. Have they got the ability, Kildare, then to kind of tighten up on all those different issues? Because they've great forwards and McCormack and the rest of them did really, really well, and I felt sorry for them, but they obviously went out in the second half, said, right, we're just going to go with this. I think they did tighten up a bit better. And maybe it was just rabbit in the headlights. I don't know what happened that first half, but Dublin punished them obviously. But will Dublin get that against Derry potentially, or Kerry or a couple of other teams? No, they won't, because the awareness, and I know people were giving out about the Ulster final, but the awareness, the use of grey matter that was going on was just phenomenal. Like, I mean, their ability to keep concentrated, as for both teams, is phenomenal. You know, because that stuff is not easy. No. People kind of look at it and go, oh, it's boring, going to go. It's not easy. There's fellas running at angles all over the place, and as soon as you slip, the ball goes to the man that you slipped up on, and it's a score. You know, so it's high pressure, high intensity, very taxing on the brain. It's 70, 80, 90 minutes of pure concentration, and it's not an easy thing, you know.
Is Kildare's approach in last year's Leinster final now vindicated?
No, it absolutely isn't.
I'm not even joking.
No, that's a nonsensical. I think
that's a fellow Kerry man there coming right out.
I'm just wondering, is it like
that is the weirdest shit take that we've ever had on this show, where there's been a long catalogue of
it's not a take. It's actually just a question.
Right. Like, okay. Erroneous piffle is my answer to that one.
I you know, it's funny. I saw, I think, one of the articles in the Irish Times on Saturday, and it was kind of saying that, you know, I think there was a general realisation that last year the idea by Jack was to keep the score down. Now, no one said that before the game or slightly thereafter. It was only kind of become kind of nuanced now, which he obviously did.
Dublin didn't score a goal last year, and like, okay, so the overarching thing.
Also a completely crap team last year who were like out on their feet and like not good.
The overarching theme of keeping the score down is obviously ridiculous. I'm not seriously suggesting that that's what Kildare should have done, but Dublin didn't score a goal last year. What killed them on Saturday? 5 goals. I forget the black and white ridiculous nature of that question. In terms of your approach to Dublin, can you reasonably go into a Leinster Championship game and say we're going toe to toe here? We're letting this.
I don't think they went toe. I think where I'm slightly disappointed in the selection of the Kildare team, and I would have to look at the Kildare starting 15 last year for the Dublin game and see how different it was to this. But definitely there was a different feel as regards. I thought the two wing backs for Kildare were potentially more wing forwards, if you get me, right? So they'd one eye on attack. Sorry, they probably had nearly 1.5 eye on attack, if you get me. So they're like, defending is an art and defending is a skill, okay? So you either have fellas who are all-out defenders, they've been defenders all their lives, and they see danger before it even happens. They cut stuff off that no one really watching ever really notices. Do you get me? So it's just those small things. It's their positioning. It's just their ability to stop a run. It's their position to kind of, when the guy looks up at the ball, he goes, oh, that pass isn't there. But yet, when you're not doing those things, all the gaps start to show. And for me, that's really what happened. So you'd have to go back and say, okay, is that symptomatic of Kildare saying, we're going to have a right go at them and we're going to go all out and we're going to put them under major pressure? Or is it just symptomatic that Kildare had the wrong fellas in the wrong positions? Okay, so it could be chicken and egg, really, that one. Dublin will not get the same type of situation against either Donegal or Derry. Whoever comes through, I'm not so sure about Galway, and I think they definitely won't get it with Kerry. Because I think the Kerry unit as a defensive unit this is what we spoke about last year. They were lazy, they were letting runners go, they were being attracted to the ball in 2s and 3s. They're trying to get to the ball, but next thing a guy's in behind and a hand pass over the top. This backdoor cut thing that Dublin do a lot, that takes maximum concentration, it takes a lot of work, but it also takes a man that when the backdoor cut happens, it takes a man who's noticing this, who comes across from the middle to cut it out, because it's actually a very, very difficult thing to defend against as a corner back. So all of those things tell me that Dublin will have a more difficult time, and then you flip the page and you say, well, actually, how easy were Killare's scores? So again, Dublin shipped a pretty big score on Saturday.
2 games running, it kind of happens without people noticing, because it feels like it all happens in garbage time largely, but it's still, statistically speaking, two big scores.
It is, yeah, and I think Kildare could have got a bit more, right? Kildare, do you remember Flynn goes off on this kind of mazy, ridiculous run near the end of the first half, or maybe just start the second half, and he shoots for goal when really he should have just stuck it over the bar. They kind of were going for goals, but then they kind of said, okay, we'll start taking our points. They could have got a bit more. Now, of course, Dublin could have got a bit more as well, and after the 5 goals, they just said, well, we're just going to keep tapping them over the bar. And it felt like against Meath, they were practicing their point scoring. Against Kildare, they practiced their goals. Yeah. But I think Kildare definitely didn't have. So again, if I'm Desi Farrell and the management team, you're saying, right, we're going to watch this game from about 25 minutes on. Because the first 20 minutes, if they were being really honest with themselves, they're saying, actually, Kildare handled us 4, if not 5 of those goals. They really did. Yes, we had great movement. Yes, we had all. But against someone like Derry, who are, if you watch, obviously, the Ulster final, we'll talk about it in a second, but their ability to stay with a man and know their job and do the job all the way, Dublin have not come up against that. Meath didn't do it for them, against them, and Kildare haven't done it against them.
Yeah, I really do think that Derry not being in the back door is good news for the Munster and Leinster champions, and I'd agree with you on that. It's obviously the All-Ireland final is the only time that Dublin and Derry can meet, for example.
Are we now talking about Derry as like a singular, the last true singularly brilliant defensive team, like the proper heirs to Donegal under McGuinness, that and so therefore they're going to be a challenge that nobody else poses at the moment? Because even Tyrone last year weren't like this, were they? Like Tyrone would have been more forward and more aggressive and like good defenders, but not like the ultra defensive unit that McGuinness's Donegal were, for example.
Yeah, I think there's a slight difference between them, and I think yes, there was a bit of horses for courses. But people were giving out. It was a hard game to watch at times. It really was. Like the first 2 minutes, Donegal kept the ball. And then
I have a pain in my hole people giving out about these games, right? Because like all of the other provincial games this weekend were essentially over with 15 minutes left to go at least, or 15 minutes gone in 2 of the cases. You could argue that Roscommon made a bit of a fist of it in the second half, but that game was largely over. So like, stop giving out about it.
What do you want?
It's literally the only game that matters, where one team is trying to beat the other team with some tactics. Explain what's going on and stop telling us you're bored as the commentators. That's your job.
Exactly.
This is terrible. They're passing the ball to each other. They're keeping possession. It's like, I'm sorry.
No, it does. It certainly doesn't help. And there was a massive difference between I believe I watched actually the repeat
BBC,
of it.
The good coverage.
Yeah, exactly. There was a marked difference because the lads
someone's
realised,
explaining what's happening.
Exactly, they realised.
And they know the players.
This is a tactical, and it's a massive arm wrestle. So for me, what happened was Donegal went in and realised, okay, listen, the big thing with Derry is counter-attack. So what we're not going to do is we're not going to get sucked into the honey pot. So we're going to stand off them. We're going to probe, but we're never going to commit too many that we get caught on the far end. So if you watch Murphy's positioning, a lot of the time he was standing in, I hate saying that team, but he was standing in midfield nearly as a quarterback. I was sometimes kind of going, is he injured? Because he wasn't really affecting the game massively. Now he wanted to obviously stay right through to 70, and they knew it would literally come to the last kick of the ball, which it did. There was nothing in that game yesterday. Like Donegal could have easily have won it. And so Donegal did a massive amount of work on that, but Derry also realised, actually, when we go forward, we can't commit as much as we have previously done. It can't just be charged at the Light Brigade. So there was a bit less for them on the offensive front. They knew goals were going to be important, and Donegal knew that we have to stop Derry getting goals. Now the one that they got was really messy. I think Donegal could have still managed to defend it out. They didn't. But that was an unbelievable, and in those games what often happens is a fellow will come up who the opposition don't expect to kick his scores, and he will be the difference. And it was Rodgers yesterday. He ends up getting 3 points from play. He ends up getting the winning score. And by the way, the conditioning of the Derry players is just freakishly good. Like Glass and himself were running as hard in that last minute of extra time than they were in the first minute of normal time. Are they as good, Ger? Have they got? I think they have. I think they will relish Croke Park from an offensive point of view, as in being able to go and being able to go hard at you. And as I said, there's a clip, I don't know if you noticed it, but there's a clip where out near Gallagher, I think McFerry, there's a ball coming along and it's going out to the sideline. And he flicks it back inside the Derry player on the ground. He flicks it back inside when he picks it up. I think they actually end up getting the goal from him maybe or something. But the Derry player is on the ground because he slipped. And Gallagher is roaring at him to get back on the ground. Like the play is moved on and he's absolutely roaring at him and he's pointing, and you see the Derry player jump up and just take off. So they all know their function. They all know that it is what we need to do. So there will be no lazy runners. There will be no situation where Con O'Callaghan gets in behind. There will be no kind of ball coming back off the post. There will be none of that kind of stuff where you get sucked towards the ball and you leave a man in behind. That will not happen. So then have Dublin or whoever else got the ability to break these guys down. Because, you look at Chrissy McCaig yesterday, what he did. Like McBurty was just, may as well have been sitting in the stand. McCaig just went, boom, that's you gone. I have you everywhere. They knew Murphy would come out, so Rodgers said, okay, well, I'm actually going to do more damage than you from an offensive point of view, and as soon as you come in at me, I'm going to take you. I have the ability to do that. And they picked up players, and still Donegal, Donegal for me don't get enough credit. They were very, very close to winning that game, and I think if they just steadied a bit more, I think they only got something like a 48% of their chances, and there was a number of goals that they could have got. I thought there was a number of opportunities, but again, you would have to go back and say they weren't butchered. They were it was unbelievable Derry defending. I think there was a little bit of a writing on the wall. The name was on the cup this year for Derry, and fair play to them. Like look at the run they've had to come through.
Unbelievably hard.
Yeah.
That Donegal piece then, is this a situation where it's deja vu from the disappointments of the last number of years? Like
isn't it?
Yeah.
It does feel like this. I watched. I don't know. I think they nearly gave Derry too much credit. I think they've probably. I watched them when they got ahead. You remember the 2 or 3 points ahead in the second half, maybe it was 2, and then they gave a silly free away, and the camera switched to Bonner, and you could see his frustration on the sideline, and Murphy as well was kind of going, because so they knew. I'd say they felt themselves, if we get ahead, we very much command it. And if you watch the way Murphy played from a defensive point of view, he basically sat in the D, which I thought was interesting. He wasn't trying to push up. He was just kind of corralling around that area. And the idea was that they were very much protecting that central column, which Derry loved to run down and get their goals. You would say Donegal did a brilliant job. Like McGuigan was very, very quiet for large parts of the game. They did their homework on what they had. McInnes had a very, very quiet game compared to what he's usually had. But yeah, I just felt, not that they overanalyzed it, but I think maybe they went in and they gave them a little bit too much. And, the first half was definitely Donegal kind of giving them too much respect. The second half, when they started to put a bit of pace on it and go at them, they made hay. And I think they needed to do that for the full game. I think Donegal needed to take the idea that, no, actually, we're going to go at pace. I think they were, as I said, I think they were probing too much. I think they were afraid to be caught too much. But they learned from it. But that's another kick in the teeth for them. So it'll be hard to see them where to go.
Could you see them knocking off Kerry or Dublin at this stage?
No.
How close a game would it be?
I think the psychological factor of this one again is a big determinant factor. You know, you're coming in, but again, can they get themselves to a position? It's a very hard game to play, Ger. It's a very taxing, tiring, mentally tiring game to play the way they're playing. And what he will probably need to do, in my view, is you would need to freshen up a number of players, you know. So it's all about their recovery. It's all about how quickly they can get over this. It's all about how they go the next day out. But I think they still have a decent say. One thing that they're missing is they're missing probably a 22 or 23-year-old Paddy McBurty. They're missing a guy inside who can say, put it in, left or right of me, and I have the speed and the ability to get that ball. So they never had that out ball, if you get me. Even when they broke it down from Derry, they were never. McKaig had obviously done an unbelievable job on him, but they never had someone else. They never had someone else in there beside him that was able to say, listen, I can win a ball and take them on and bring us further up the field. So every time they got the ball, it was we build slowly, you know, and we look for the loopy runs and everything else, which is all fine. But I think they only kicked in. Well, they kicked that one long high ball in once and they nearly got a goal out of it. But
was this game last year that Derry refused to take the last shot on, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Which felt a little bit weird, where Donegal are like, oh, we could win this game in normal time. No, we'll play for the draw.
Yeah.
Or were they unaware of how long was left?
It felt to me like they were playing for the draw. It felt like as if they just...
It was strange, yeah, because they got the kick out and then they just they tipped it across and back. But even at the very, very end, I felt like rather than putting that hand pass into they should have just kicked the ball over the bar and just reset for the kick out. Yeah. Potentially, I think the referee would have allowed the kick out. They could have won the kick out, and then they could have got an equaliser. But look, I think Derry deserved it. Derry deserved it for the campaign. They came up against different challenges all the way. Donegal learned from Monaghan, because we spoke about this, you know, where Monaghan kind of said to them, well, we're going to sit and wait for you and then counter-attack. But Donegal didn't commit as many forward, which was a good move, which frustrated Derry. But ultimately, I think they gave them just probably a bit too much respect, but Derry deserve it.
Because of the nature of Derry's rise, they're obviously the story from yesterday. No provincial title since 1998. It's very, very hard to make a case that they're not the story yesterday. But is there something similar happening from a bit of a higher base with Galway at the moment? This sort of unstoppable rise that they're on, the things that they've changed, the fact there's been a few frustrations during the COVID years especially, and things are just right for them at the moment, and they too are on this upward trajectory that could end up in an All-Ireland final. Yeah,
you know, it's Galway are kind of going about their business nearly unbeknownst to anyone else, you know. Quietly, you know, everyone's bemoaning the fact of Leinster, Munster, you know, saying about Ulster, and no one's really having a kind of close eye on Connacht. It's amazing that I think sometimes, you know, people look at, say, the rise of Derry, like that is a body of work that has gone on for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years, you know, and it's the culmination of that. And you could say that, you know, going back to Kevin Walsh's time with Galway, that he decided we need to start putting more of a defensive structure in this team. We need to get a bit meaner. We need to get a little bit harder in the tackle. We need to get a little bit more tactically nuanced. Yes, we're always good going forward, but we need to lock that down. And I think he brought that to them. Now, some Galway supporters didn't particularly like the way they were playing near the end, but I think they needed to get that to become what they are now. And I think Porrick, to be fair to him, has just built on that. He knows he has the forward power. He knows he has the ability.
Did come in and say, we're not playing Galway style, we're going to get back Galway style, and then they got spanked a couple of years and now he's back. So
absolutely.
It does feel like there's a little bit of unfairness in this is going to be a new broom, we're going to get rid of all the Kevin Walsh here, and then actually they're like straight back, hang on a second. And they have brought in expertise in the back room whose job it is to do that.
But Gerard, as you know, it's narratives. You know, it's you can say that and come in. And of course, if we were going into the Galway job and we knew that we'd come in and say the exact same thing, this is going to be completely different, you know. But actually, it's not really. You know, they 12 or 13 guys behind it. Look, that's just modern football. I'm still amazed at commentators going, and there's 13 men behind the ball. I go, come on, seriously? How long have we been watching this? And you're still saying that? I think there are opportunities as well for someone to get at Galway. Okay, I think the way they are leaking goals and leaking big changes in momentum against them is not great. Like even Roscommon were dead and buried and should have been dead and buried, but yet they still come back to get within 3 points of them. I think Roscommon, when they changed things up in the second half and went a bit more direct, right, and actually started playing ball into their full forward line and runners off, they got a lot of joy out of that. So I think anyone playing Galway will go, okay. I think they are set up well that they will snaffle you if you're moving the ball left and right, and they'll frustrate you, and they've enough speed and power down on the break and the counter-attack to catch you. And of course they've got some forwards that once you just put it into space, these guys will harm you. But I think if you do go at them hard and early, there's some gaps in that defence.
The provincial championship is very quickly at the end of this. What do we do? It's like
how long have we got here?
It's never going to change, is it? Like we're stuck in this weird where Ulster's great. We don't care. Screw you. Don't touch our championship. It's the greatest.
Yeah.
And like, okay, great for you lads. Well done. But we're supposed to be like this is supposed to be like a unified thing where we're all in this together. But we're not. We are not in this together.
Yeah, like a few years ago, I remember with the CPA that one of the things we put in was, that there would be a vote to put in whereby basically it would be a situation where there would be a responsibility and acceptability that you actually, what way you voted for, it would be known. Okay, so everything would be there, and it would be very, very opaque and transparent, and away you go. And I remember, I think it was actually Larry McCarthy, I think, stood up and spoke against it and said, no, we're not going to do this. So the transparency thing, I think, is enormous, because first of all, the first step is you need to know, well, who is voting against what? Like, who are the people? Like, so did Dublin vote against some of the proposals last year? Have Meath voted against it? Have the people in Leinster, which way are they voting? Like, are they voting that they want change but they're just being hammered down by everyone else, so actually fair play to them? Or are they still voting with the status quo and a few tinkerings around the edge? My worry always was that when the club part came in and the split season came in, that there would be a doff of the hat to that because there was such a groundswell of opinion, but then they'd go, well, actually, and don't worry, we'll look after the rest, which is basically what happened. You can give your submissions, but really that submission's going to go in the toilet. We know this is the submission that's going to work, and that's the one that we're going to maintain, and that's what's happened, whether they do a little few changes. So you're in a situation where, as I said to you last week or the week before, there is... well, whether they know it or whether they don't know it, they're killing the sport in each province, especially Leinster. Like, if I'm a young Meath fan or a Kildare fan after the weekend and I'm coming out of Croke
Park, or a player who might be good enough to play something else,
absolutely, you're gone. Because you're kind of looking and you're going, there's always the hope, and there's always the thing at every year, but it is a massive body of work that's required, and consistently you need competition.
But those players will be gone in a few years anyway, Anthony. So
we don't have to worry.
Yeah.
And unfortunately that's where we are. And competition can only, I heard you lads talking earlier on about the Tailteann Cup games. You look at the score lines of the Tailteann Cup games and you're going, actually they were pretty exciting games. 2-3 scores in it. Both teams going at it, hammer and tongs.
Yeah, the principle of pitting opposition against each other who are of a similar standard.
Yeah. And this stuff, if a fellow wants to go to America, go to America.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself. But the county persists. We move on. Because it's not just about you going to America. It's about the 10-year-olds and the 8-year-olds and the 12-year-olds who are coming up, and it's about us improving and getting to a point where we're going to be playing at our maximum level, whatever that is. By the way, Leitrim are not going to be in 10 years or 15 years time. Don't just mean to say Leitrim, but it's more going up and winning 10 Sams in a row. It's not going to happen. But is it going to happen that they continually progress and move on and get to a level where they can be playing at a much higher level? Absolutely. That's all you need.
We were chatting about this earlier, and our friend of the show, John Donegal, was in touch saying that rubbish when we were talking about the provincial championships being a complete joke. The chance of winning a Connacht title meant a huge amount to Galway and Roscommon yesterday. The same for Derry and Donegal. 24 years since Derry won. Leinster and Munster are a different story. Like, obviously, the scenes in Derry, not in Derry, in Clones yesterday were incredible, and the game, even though there would have been a few detractors from it, was full of drama. Same with the Connacht final. But the reason why these games are full of drama and we are so excited about them is because these are top 12 teams going up against each other week in, week out. The reason why Derry have been involved in 3 of the better games so far this year is because they were against top teams, against Tyrone, against Monaghan, against Donegal, and Derry themselves are a top 12 team, and that's why we're getting this. The same with the 2 fixtures that we get every year in Connacht. It has nothing to do with geography. It adds a bit of spice to it for sure, but you need the basic ingredients before that sort of spice actually matters.
Correct. And look, I played for a decent amount of time, and every year you went in with the possibility, whether you were being completely, delusional or not, you had a chance of winning Leinster. It wasn't, you weren't coming off a 10, 12, 16 point hammerings every single year. So you always had that confidence to go and improve yourself in the off season and get yourself and do what you needed to do. I honestly feel for players in parts of the country who are going back to the well again to basically play in the league. And then that's pretty much it, and they're kind of saying to themselves, well, because it's not a nice place to be. Croke Park for those Kildare players and the Kildare management, that is not a nice place to be on Saturday, and neither was it for Meath players the time before. And actually, it's getting to a point where it's probably not a nice place to be for Dublin players. Like James McCarthy lifted that cup up now with about as much joy in his heart as, it was like he was given the poison chalice.
And he hasn't been a captain.
No,
he hasn't got to do that loads. Like that is actually in his career. That will be a moment you got to lift trophies. Yeah, I did. I was lifting a trophy. But
it's a massive milestone for him. But just to finish, the competition is the thing, right? That breeds intensity. It breeds kind of an association, what you want to do, and it attracts people to it. You just mentioned about the Dublin girls and the Meath ladies. Like, Meath is absolutely. I was driving down the road on Sunday. All the bus stops around my local area full of boys, girls, men, women going into the Meath match. More so than I saw the week before. Heading in to watch the girl, which is fantastic. But there's a rivalry. There's a it's a proper rivalry that they want to get behind. And you look at Cork Kerry, you look at different things, how things have. And by the way, but what I can't stand is on this. I think county boards, a lot of them, right, take this and they kind of see it as a pass, and they kind of sure, look, how could we ever compete against Dublin, or how could we ever compete against Kerry? Well, why?
There's
well, actually, hold on.
As well.
There's still a house to be put in order.
There's a pie chart,
and correct. And when I say some of the best games you got this year are teams within the top 12 playing each other. Meath against Dublin, if you look at Allianz League position, is a top 12 head to head. Kildare against Dublin is a top 12 head to head as well.
Well, let's look at Derry. Derry was an absolute shambles 3-4 years ago, wasn't it, Ger?
Yeah.
Division 4.
Back to
I remember Brolly talking about it, saying. I remember actually talking to a couple of fellas, ex-players, and they were just saying, the county board. There's a massive. Kind of blockage with regard to where they're going. Where there was
Slaughtneil players were unavailable because of their success, but then also weren't committing because there was kind of no point, and it was
no
all
point.
It was
a
lot
of animosity, a lot of toxicity, everything else going on, as you say. And to see where, so can it be done? Absolutely, it can be done. And by the way, it's not like they're a bolter. They have been coming. They have been consistently improving. Go from 4 to 3 to 2. So there's a template there. And I'm not saying every county can do it, but you know what? You can have a go at it.
There is this is multifactorial. The population and the funding for Dublin has definitely skewed the game in their favour, and so already the other counties are coming from behind when it comes up to playing them. And then there's mismanagement of your own resources, and it could be 10% mismanagement, it could be 50% funding, it could be 25% funding, it could be 50% mismanagement of your own it's all part of the cocktail that goes into the situation, but it becomes self-defeating after a period of time. The biggest problem of all is the competition structures are screwed, and until you fix the competition structures, and for that we know there is no appetite to do it properly, they've created what is going to be a disaster down the line, where we're stuck now with a new system. We haven't even seen the worst part of the new system yet. That's going to come in next year with the round robin, where they're going to have a round robin where 1 out of the 4 teams is going to get kicked out. And you're like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, my last thing, that competition structure, if it comes in, so let's say you have a, whatever, 6 groups or whatever it is, 4 or 5. What that will actually show is, what it will massively highlight is the county boards and the counties who aren't doing the work. the mismanagement, right? Because at the moment you can kind of, as I said to you, you can kind of get away with it. You know, you get hammered by Dublin and you go out and you hope for, you know, another, maybe you get someone who's just in just as bad a state as you are in the qualifier, and you beat them and you get one win on, and then
we're close.
The players get a big
progress.
ramp up and you get bet by 4 or 5 points by another team. Jesus, that wasn't a bad year. But actually, you lift the hood, you say, well, hold on a second. Like any organisation should be, what's the revenue? What's the inputs going into this? Where's the outputs?
Can't talk about the money.
Meath's tails must be up. Meath's men's tails must be up after Saturday's performance by Kildare. I mean, it wasn't that bad after all.
Yeah, in fairness,
he's just looking to annoy this morning, isn't he?
9:45. We're a bit late. We got to go. Right. We'll tomorrow, Keith Wood, and maybe even a power rankings. Are we going to have power rankings? Maybe tomorrow. We'll do. Yeah, and much more. Here's some of the best from the weekend across Off the Ball. Enjoy.
We're going to turn to the Champions League final last night, a 14th European Cup for Real Madrid, PSG, Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool. It is hard to think of a team which has come through a more difficult run to triumph in Europe and largely written off at every turn as well. And then for Liverpool, well, it is a season which felt like it had an air of destiny about it for quite some time, but that has hollowed out slightly. Potential quadruple now down to a League Cup and FA Cup double. Ray Houghton will join us in a few moments' time to chat about the game, but first there is much anger at the scenes outside the Stade de France. Very happy to talk to Conor Moore, who's familiar to you in various guises, I'm sure. Conor, thanks for joining us. You were at the game last night. How are things?
Bonjour, Joe. Things are all right, yeah. A bit of a weird one last night, I have to say. Crazy experience.
Crazy experience. So I'm just, looking on social media, I suppose, and then reading the various reports in the papers this morning. So, for instance, like Rob Draper here in the Mail, he has a headline and it's "No one in charge, police shrugged, you could feel the situation spiralling out of control." So I just read part of his piece, and he was talking about getting to within 100 yards of the Stade de France. The bottlenecks began. Incredibly, the police parked 3 vans to block a walkway. The reason was unclear. It was obvious what would ensue. The build-up of fans was growing. At 7:05, I spoke to police in French and told them it was dangerous to move the fans. Most just shrugged. Some tried to help. There were children and blind fans trying to negotiate their way through a 3-metre gap. As I grew more frustrated, it seemed clear what was going to happen. One policeman agreed to call his boss. Yet again, why wasn't there anyone in authority able to move? And Joe Bernstein, he was writing as well, same paper. He said, among those affected was Liverpool's 1981 European Cup match winner Alan Kennedy, who had to be helped over a fence near the stadium to avoid trouble. Marvin Matip, brother of the Liverpool defender Joel, had to flee with his pregnant wife and took refuge in a nearby restaurant after police used tear gas. Spain's sports minister was unhappy as well. He was tweeting about being held up for over an hour outside the stadium. And then apparently some of the supporters who had paid the £125 for a ticket eventually gave up trying to get in and went elsewhere. How was your experience, Conor?
Very similar to what they're saying. So we got the tickets on Friday night, and the tickets are the old type paper tickets, but they didn't have, you know, the shiny strip that you see on tickets sometimes. And my cousin, these lads are fanatic Liverpool fans, and they decided to see if the tickets were real, and they sent it in. They said, yeah, they are real, but they're all paper tickets. You definitely could make these type of tickets, I'd say. So when I heard people had fake tickets, I was like, yeah, you probably would have fake tickets. But got to the stadium, and I approached that bottleneck there where the ramp, and you had a little gap, and literally, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of people were supposed to go through this. We went through it, and we were up there, and we were stopped. And we were there for 10 minutes, and I just said to the lads, I said, here, let's go around the other side or something, because there was no signs anywhere. There was nothing to say, Real Madrid this way, Liverpool that way. Nothing. I went up to a police officer, and just like you said there, he shrugged his shoulders at me. I knocked on another door of a police officer, and he looked at me, looked away. The third guy then said, go down that way. He sent me down to the Madrid end. So we ended up going 360 around the stadium, and we landed at this famous Gate Y. And we were there, nearly 2 hours before, whatever. And it was starting to pack up, and we were up against the fence. And an hour went by, and people were pretty patient. People were singing, and it wasn't too bad. But then they were shouting, when are you going to open the gates and stuff like this? And after about an hour, everybody starts coughing and sneezing. And I was like, what's going on here? All of a sudden, I'm sneezing, I'm coughing. There's people kind of on their hunkers then spitting out stuff onto the ground. And my cousin throws me a scarf, I put it over me, and then I realised someone was after getting the tear gas or mace spray, whatever it's called. And we stood there, and then they just wouldn't open the gate. There was just no communication. There were security guards looking at us. One guy was taking a video of the fans, just as if like, oh, look at this, they're all packed outside the stadium. We were up against this fence, and it got to about 10 to 9. I said to my uncle, I said, here, I'm out of here, because if that whistle blows and this game starts, God knows what's going to happen. And like, they could charge the fence, you don't know what's going to go on. And in fairness to the fans that were around us, and there was thousands, every time anybody did something, you know, got excited and started pulling at the fence or jumping at the fence, they were pulling them down, they were telling them to shut up, they were like, you're not helping things, blah, blah, blah. And the security just kept looking at us. And this went on. And then when the mace, people weren't too excited, but when the mace went off, people were getting scared. And I remember, like, I'll be honest, like, I was scared. I wanted to get out of there, because I thought if it gets tight and there's a bit of a crush, like, you mightn't have time to say, oh, we better get out of here. And I seen a kid shaking like a leaf with fear, and the father was trying to calm him down. They ended up leaving the queue. They had tickets. I think they left. Like, I know people that paid thousands for these tickets and walked away from the gate last night. We got in then when they opened one gate, they let 10,000 people through one gate into the stadium. And when you got in, there was turnstiles. There was maybe 6, 7 turnstiles, but one gate to get everybody in, a metre wide. And even when I got through there after a few hours of waiting, it was me and 3 other guys squeezing through the gate to get in. And we got in, I turned around, and I saw 2 lads walk in with 2 tickets, and one of them put under the validator, whatever it is, and a police officer just sprayed mace at him. And everyone behind them got it. Like, he didn't actually do anything at all. He was walking in, and in fairness to him, he took it, and he just kept walking to his seat, and he was like, meow. He just kept going. And with the tickets, we had 6 tickets. I was there with 5 other family members. And my uncle's ticket, he was told that ticket was fake, even though his ticket was the exact same ticket as ours. They were all the same, 1 to 6, seated together. All 5 of us got through, then he didn't get through. And they let him through only because we showed him, look, they're the 6 same tickets. And Andy Robertson from Liverpool said the same thing. He said he gave his family members tickets, and some of them were stopped and they were told they were fake tickets, and he got them through the club.
Yeah, but you know, here is Andy Robertson. Have a listen on that very point, because several of the, I think we can call them myths at this stage, certainly that Liverpool fans were late arriving was the initial explanation on UEFA's behalf, and that was roundly booed when that sign went up in the stadium, because clearly at that stage Liverpool fans knew what nonsense that was. And then the fake tickets narrative, I suppose, is out there as well. So here is Andy Robertson. You referenced him.
My tickets were through the club, and somehow somebody told one of my mates that he's got a fake ticket, which I can assure definitely wasn't, because it was, you know, obviously through me. So then obviously the French police decided to throw tear gas on fans, on families and things like that. So like it's not been well organised. You know, you have to have some sympathy, because obviously it's been kind of thrown on Paris kind of last minute with all that's went on, and that's all that kind of went on in Russia and stuff, and they had to change the venue. But you know, as a UEFA competition, as the biggest game in world football, it should be organised a lot better, and delays like that shouldn't be happening. And definitely the force that was used probably tonight by certain authorities shouldn't be happening either.
So it beggars belief that they can't seem to identify, Conor, a real ticket and a fake ticket.
Yeah, the lads I was with now, they've been to the last few finals. They travelled from America, my cousins, and they were saying the tickets this time were different, and usually they're digital, and that they were a little bit apprehensive getting the tickets off the guy on Friday, because they paid mega money for these tickets, and they were like, geez, these better be real. Now, they got them validated, obviously, from somebody's website, but even like, the thing I just didn't like was, and even on my social media pages, like, I never really say anything serious, because I have no interest arguing with people that I've never met before, on social media. I just don't see the point of it. Like, I usually throw up the impressions of whatever, stuff like that. But when I came back last night and I seen all these stories and stuff that was put out by UEFA, I was like, no, I was there. I saw this. I saw how the fans reacted. Like, the Liverpool fans that I was around, they kept all of us safe because they were the ones telling everybody to calm down. They were like, get back, push back, do not, watch the people against the fence. Yeah. They were so conscientious of all that type of stuff, obviously given Liverpool, like, the horrible stuff that's happened in the past. They really were. And, like, when the gas was going off, you could see people were really frustrated, but they still didn't go overboard. And anyone that possibly went overboard, they were pulled right back into line and told to stop. And when we got in, I think 17 minutes were played, and I don't know, I couldn't even watch the match. There was empty seats around me. It was just weird. I went out to check to see, did all the fans get in? And I looked down at Gate Y, and there was a queue a mile long, maybe 7 or 8 people deep all the way along the fence, and to the left was Gate Z, and that was empty. And that was into the same place, like the same area, so they just could have walked down towards the Y seats. They wouldn't open it, and I seen a guy down there shouting at a police officer saying, I have a ticket, let me in. And he kept pointing that way as if to say, go back that way. And then he sprayed him. And I was thinking, like, he wasn't actually a physical threat. There was a fence between the two of them, an iron fence. This guy was just shouting, let me in. I sprayed him, he was like, I don't want to listen to this guy. I sprayed him.
Yeah. That's shocking stuff. And you know that period you're saying where you're waiting 2 hours and you said you got to a point where you're with your uncle and you realised if a certain panic sets in or if the start of the game happens and there's a sudden upsurge in the energy or movement of the crowd, you might find yourself in a sticky spot. What kind of an area is that? You're penned in, obviously, in some way.
You only if you're up close to the fence.
Okay.
To be fair, like I say, where we were kind of like quarter way up, and you could say maybe it was 12 people deep. But as it went back, then it was like 6 people deep. Okay. So in a weird way, when you look at it today, you're like, no, we would have been safe enough. But yesterday, just the anxiety was heightened, and you were just worried. Jesus, like, I hope this doesn't get like very bad. So I said to my uncle, I think I was around a few minutes before the OK, said, if the whistle goes, let's go to a pub, let's watch the match. Yeah. But then someone said that it got delayed, so we thought, right, we'll keep hanging in. If they're delaying it, then they must want us to get into the stadium. But it was the lack of communication. They just looked at us. One guy came over and spoke to the fans at the gate, and I don't know, was he having a laugh, but he came over talking in French. And they were just shouting at him, please get us someone that talks English. Like, nobody there could speak French.
Yeah. Chris Sutton was, he's on the front page of the Sunday Times here. So he is saying, coming in, there was a lot of shoving and pushing. There were fans trying to get through because there were ticket checks, and there were some fans who didn't have tickets, and they were the ones causing the problems. Did you see any of that going on?
To be fair, I did see 2 people do that around where we were, so they got close to the stadium. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. 100% there's fans there that were doing that, and that this was the primary cause of it. I did see things on Sky Sports, though. There was local thugs that got close to the stadium that were trying to jump the fence, and they were throwing things in, and they weren't fans of anybody.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, was that the reason they got spooked? But yeah, there was a few people probably trying to get in with fake tickets, but the issue for me was, if you had enough turnstiles open, you had enough gates open.
Yeah.
People come up with a fake ticket, you can say, go back. But if you have thousands of people trying to get into a gate and some fella says, your ticket is fake.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, my uncle, if he couldn't get in that time, it would have been nearly impossible for him to go back through that crowd.
Yes, and that's where the danger is. And also, I mean, any match I've been to, and like any good practice, is that there are security rings further away from a stadium. Like, it even happens Croke Park when you're trying to get up Jones's Road. Show us your ticket before you can get any closer to the stadium. Like that, any ticketless fan, like let's be honest about human nature, it's going to happen on occasion around these events, but that any fan could get that close to the stadium is a security risk for starter. Any ticketless fan should not be able to get that close to a stadium.
Oh, 100%, yeah. But at the same time, like, when you have a bunch of lads running up, you know, I know 2 guys were stopped when we were walking by one of those checks. 2 lads were stopped and they were told to turn back. And I think I seen that fella that evening. But even coming out of the stadium, the lights weren't even on really outside the back of the Stade de France, and it was nearly scary walking out of the stadium.
Well, can I read you,
one of the most intimidating things I was ever at.
Can I read you Jim Beglin on that, right? So, because there's footage of like plenty of police in riot gear around Paris city centre and clearing people and batons going, and it didn't look like the batons were required. But Jim Beglin says, and again, I like. No more than yourself, I wouldn't associate Jim Beglin with taking to Twitter to air a grievance like this all that often. So Beglin says, post-match last night was the scariest I have ever experienced. Organised gangs set about mugging departing fans. We ran a gauntlet of thuggery on our way to the metro. There wasn't a police officer in sight. I witnessed so many ambush attacks on unsuspecting attendees. Reprehensible, UEFA.
Oh, that's exactly my experience. We walked to the train. And the lads were like, oh, what train are we getting on? I was like, I'll tell you what we're getting on. We're getting on that one, because it's the first one. And we ended up getting on a train going the wrong way away from the house.
Yeah.
And we ended up in some town somewhere. We got out. It took us about an hour to get an Uber, and then we went back that way. We just wanted to get out of there. It was the weirdest experience of anything in my life. And again, like I say, I'm not naive, and I know soccer fans can be wild, and you've seen what happened in Wembley there last year or wherever. It can get wild. But like, I was there last night. This wasn't wild. Like, these people had valid tickets trying to get in, and they were treated like animals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.